We could go ahead and get started here in a minute. That way we'll get back on track. I've got us recording. Okay, we will get started with our very first Reciprocity Committee meeting. Today is Monday, November the 3rd. We are starting the meeting at 8:10 a.m. This is the State Board Cosmetology and Barber Examiners, and the Reciprocity Committee will be starting with our board members. Ms. Patricia Richmond is present, and Ms. Nina Coppinger. And legal counsel for the board that will be assisting us today is Christopher Whitaker. And as possibly two more members join us later on, we will continue. And on your iPads, you have the reciprocity applications. I'll go through them. If you can make sure that the mic is on anytime you've got questions, we will proceed. At the end of the meeting, we will go ahead and elect a chairperson, and possibly by then we'll have our other two board members joining us. So first on your iPads for your review is an application for reciprocity of an esthetician license from Virginia. This is for Vi Duong. Certification shows initial licensure in April 2007 with 600 hours and a waiver of examination. The tax records provided for proof of work experience state nail technician in all of the documents. The recommendation is that the applicant take the Tennessee examination.
His current license from Virginia is nails?
It's esthetician.
Oh.
The situation that happens often between aesthetics and manicuring is that a lot of shops in different states do the two things and don't separate them. So,
what was your recommendation? Exam?
It's the take the exam,
Yeah,
because the experience was only in nail tech, and there was no way to prove that it was in aesthetics.
And he didn't take an exam, right?
Correct. They waived it, and so Virginia might have had some kind of grandfathering in period.
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion. He does take the exam. Go with the recommendation.
Second it.
We're all in favor.
Aye.
Easy, we keep going. Thank you. All right. Next is an application for reciprocity of cosmetology license from Florida for Carol Fillmore. Certification shows initial licensure in June of 2012. Ms. Fillmore's provided proof of a different license number from Florida that states she was licensed under provisions of Chapter 477, which grandfathered her in. She states she was licensed in 1980 with 1,500 hours. That license expired in 2009, and Florida issued her a brand-new license number. She could not provide any proof of work in the industry. My recommendation is that the applicant be approved for a reciprocal license.
The 1,500 hours, right?
Well, that's what she says. The drawback here, because she was licensed so long ago in 1980s that the school wasn't available to verify. Most states, and Florida would be one of them, don't keep education records. So based on her information, that's what she says. And at the end on page 9, you'll see her breakdown of her education, her license since 1980, and that's what she provided, that different license number.
And Florida reissued her a license based on what?
They would have reissued her based on the fact that she'd had one. According to, she doesn't state it here, I believe she did have to take an exam. What happens in most states, and we're one of those, is if you don't reissue, you expire, which was what happened in 2009. To come back in, you've got to do something to prove. For us, it would be the law exam and the practical. For Florida, I was not able to get a call back to know exactly how they reissued her and why she got a brand new number. We wouldn't have done it that way. We'd issue the same number. But I did not get a call back to answer and have all those loops kind of closed, if you will. We could wait to see if Florida does respond or accept her information and go with the fact that she obviously had a license between 1980 to 2009, which shows work experience, but we don't have anything in the last 5 years, and she wasn't able to provide work history.
So it expired in 2009, and
Right.
then they reissued her a new license in October of 13.
2012, June of 2012,
Oh,
on page 7.
in her letter, it says issued 10/23/13. Her current license.
Yeah, they've got an issue date of June 27th, 2012, and it's active through next October. So,
I don't know, it's just that lapse of time that kind of concerns me.
yeah,
They can't really confirm whether she was or not.
they can't. I couldn't get a confirmation. Now, I can attempt to, and all I did was try to reach someone by phone, and that's real difficult with most states, not just Florida. I can go ahead and, if the board decides, that send a letter in writing to Florida, or an email just asking for confirmation of this license. They won't have confirmation of the hours. They just don't go back that far. And the 3 years she lapsed, what I personally think, if we ask for more information, we need is, how did they allow her to come back in? Was
Right.
it with any type of exam?
I would make a motion to get written information from the state of Florida.
Okay. And I know they won't confirm the hours, but if they can confirm how they reinstated her, is there any, depending on what they say, is there any way that you would approve for her to be granted, or does she need to represent in December? What would you be comfortable with?
To hold her up, I mean, I'd
No.
like to make a decision one way or the other.
Maybe if the facts are there, I think you could use your own judgment.
Okay,
What
okay.
do you-
So my letter is going to say that we're requiring information as to how they reinstated her in 2012. And if it's a theory exam, which is most likely the only thing, would the board be okay? Would you be okay with?
Oh, if she did take an exam.
Right, and that's what I don't know right now.
If she took no exam,
Okay.
I would recommend that she take the Tennessee exam.
So we'll have the motion with requesting written confirmation from Florida on how they reinstated her, and if it included an exam, you are okay with me approving her for a license. If it did not, she would need to get a letter from us saying that she needs to take both exams?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah. Motion, and I'll second.
Okay. Next on our iPads is Amanda Howe. We have an application for reciprocity of cosmetology license from Iowa. Certification shows initial licensure in 2007 with 2,100 hours and no practical examination. The recommendation is that the applicant be approved for reciprocal license. This is one of those rules I think we'll discuss at the end. When is it that they've got enough experience that the board feels we don't need the practical exam anymore? And she would she's presented because Iowa, like several other states, doesn't do the practical. And so we can always request the practical, but it is difficult for someone that's been practicing for, 7 to 10 years to go back to that practical. They don't have the material anymore. They've got to make the expense to purchase those items. And so this is a rule that we can set at the end, but for now, that's her situation. So she's got the hours. She just doesn't have that practical exam.
How long has she been practicing?
Since 2007?
Does she have the 5-year history?
She hasn't provided it because she has the hours. Normally, we request the 5-year work experience if the hours aren't there, because the experience compensates for the number of
Right.
hours missing. And in the rules, we can decide that at the end, that if they don't have the practical exam and they provide the work history, then maybe I can then at that point approve them. So something to think about as we put together that rule.
Right, I think if she does have the recent 5-year work history, then she does qualify for reciprocity. So we need proof of that. However, if she doesn't, I think she probably needs to take the practical exam.
Okay. So we will be sending her a letter requesting the 5 years' experience, and if she has it, it would be okay to approve her.
Yeah.
Okay. And otherwise, she needs to take the practical examination. Am I correct?
experience. I think so.
When you guys are
Yeah.
talking for the record, when this red light is on, you are recording. If not, then it's not going to catch it back there, so.
Okay.
just-
Well, I'll make a motion to approve her with proof of work history.
Perfect. Okay.
Second.
Good morning. Come on in, Ms. Granger. We'll give you a minute to get settled, and I'll give you the page as soon as you. We are on page 13, and I think that iPad will be right on the reciprocity. This application is for reciprocity of a cosmetology license from Connecticut for Chelsea Keenan. Certification shows license, initial license in August 2011 with 1,500 hours and no practical exam. Connecticut also accepts applicants with a minimum of an 8th grade education. My recommendation is that the applicant take the practical examination.
Apologies for being late. I detest that, so.
Not a problem. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Gillihan.
She has taken a written exam?
That is correct. In Connecticut, they do the written exam. She has the hours. She's been licensed since 2011. She's taken only the written, which is why the recommendation for the practical. The other thing that I wanted us to, again, keep in mind at the end of the, oh, you don't have an iPad? Is there not one?
Right here.
Oh,
It's in front of you.
And we are on page 15, Mr. Gillihan. Again, this one's one that we'll have to think about for our rules at the end. In Tennessee, they're required to have a 10th grade education. And the high schools make sure to go through the diploma or the GED or that level of education. She's got the 8th grade education and no exam. So my recommendation is that she definitely take the practical. And we can just talk about if the education, by the time they've got their license somewhere else, just doesn't matter anymore. I mean, how do you go back to that? You can't. Good.
Well, I make a motion that we do go with the recommendation that she take the practical exam.
I second that emotion. Yeah.
Perfect. Next is an application for reciprocity of a manicurist license. Mr. Van Kankeen may end up showing up for the meeting at 9. I couldn't reach him Friday, but we're going to go ahead and go through his information, and if he comes back, we may have to readdress it with the full board. His application is from Georgia. Certification shows an initial licensure in February 2002 with 525 hours. Mr. Kin was unable to provide a transcript from the school, and the state board only keeps the records for a limited time. I believe Georgia is 5 years. He provided tax records from 2009 through 2013 with work experience in the industry, so that is confirmed. A letter from a tax accountant was also sent, which states that he did his tax returns as a manicurist since 2005. So with that, my recommendation is that we approve his reciprocal license.
I'll use that one. Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Has 525 hours, right.
Right, but he does have the work
He does have the
experience.
work
He has
history.
between 2009 and 2013, yes.
License is valid in Georgia?
Yes, it's valid through 2015.
Okay. Make the motion to grant him reciprocity.
Second.
Okay. Next is an application for reciprocity of a master barber license from Alabama for Teray Michelle. Certification shows initial licensure in August of 2014 with 1,000 hours and appears to not have taken the state exam. Applications from Alabama, if you will look on page 21 for his, toward the bottom, it says license was obtained by, and normally there's a check mark by the practical and the written, and there's nothing there for him. And Alabama is a state where just recently they went back to the master barber and approving it, and they did a lot of grandfathering in. And so, based on this certification, I would assume that the exam probably wasn't taken because it's not marked. So my recommendation is, and he only has the 1,000 hours, that we, based on previous recommendations, we've been asking for hours to be completed. So if we went still along those lines, he would be needing 500 hours and to take both exams.
Make a motion
I second.
for him to take the 500 extra hours and then to take your exams for the state of Tennessee.
Everyone in agreement? Okay. Application for reciprocity of manicurist license, and we are on page 22. This is an application from Georgia for Huang Yang Thai Nguyen. Certification shows initial licensure in October 2009 with 525 hours by examination. Because Georgia also certifies hours from apprenticeship, and he had had a long grandfathering in period, the board office asks all applicants from Georgia to provide transcripts so that we can confirm the actual number of hours versus apprenticeship hours. Mr. Nguyen attempted to get a transcript from Georgia, but they only keep it for 5 years, so he was unable to provide any records regarding the schooling hours, but he did provide tax records that show proof of work in the industry between 2009 through 2013. So the recommendations that the applicant be approved for reciprocal license.
He was not under the apprentice program?
No, he has, on his application, said 525 hours. We don't have a confirmation from the state. If you look at his application, he couldn't remember the name of the school. And so that makes me a little bit uncomfortable, which is why I bring it to the board. But based on his information, he says 525, and that's from 2002 moving forward, what Georgia has requested or required.
And I would need more evidence of how many hours he really does have.
Georgia is not going to be able to give us that number. Based on their certification, which is just on page 24, it would appear that what he's stating should be true. It should be the 525 because his license method just says application licensure. So it should be the traditional versus the 1,050 for apprenticeship hours. But he goes back to, his schooling goes back to 2009, and it appears that that's right at the cutoff where they don't have his school information.
Worked all the years, more than 5 years.
Provided from 09 to 13 in Georgia, in nail techs, yes.
What's the recommendation?
That he be approved for reciprocal license.
That's based on what?
Based on, with most applicants, like I said, with Georgia, we ask for the transcript just to see it, and most are able to provide it. He was not, but his information says he has the 525 hours. The certification comes directly to us, so we know that it's legitimate. It doesn't state otherwise, and his tax records provide work in the industry for the last 5 years.
I'll make a motion, we go with the recommendation.
Second.
Next is an application for reciprocity of a master barber license from Oklahoma for Amy Lee Sanders. Certification shows initial licensure in February 2002 with 3,000 hours in apprenticeship training by examination. The recommendation is that the applicant be approved for reciprocal license, and that's based on the number of years that she's been working.
He also has a barber instructor.
I think so.
This is 600 hours training in a barber school, and when you're experienced or 4 years licensed experience.
No, I don't know if that's a standard, there's no checkbox to let us
Okay.
know that it's both,
Okay.
but that, you make a great point. I think all she's applying for and claims to have is the 3,000 apprenticeship. The grades for her exams are posted at the top.
She just wants the barber.
That's correct.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve her.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is an application for reciprocity of cosmetology license from Florida for Ashley Sato. Certification shows initial licensure in December 2009 with 1,200 hours and no practical examination. Letter of recommendation shows work in the industry since 2009. The recommendation is that the applicant take the practical examination. Got exactly the 5 years' work history, so that gives her the hours. But this is something, again, that we'll talk about based on what we approved earlier with a 2007 license. We're still asking for that practical exam.
I motion the recommendation.
I'll second. And she's got her 5 years.
All agreed, thank you. Next on our application for reciprocity is an esthetician license from Minnesota for Phuoc Tran. Certification reflects initial date of licensure in May 2012 by reciprocity from Texas. Certification from Texas shows an initial date of licensure in June 2006, and certification of hours list Bessemer Beauty College with 750 hours. That school is not one of the schools under investigation, and the hours were obtained over 8 years ago. Based on that, the recommendation is that the applicant be approved for reciprocity because they also have that Minnesota license.
What'd you say about 8 years? What was that part?
She's had her license since June 2006, and whereas Texas reciprocity, we're still not accepting right now.
Right.
She has education hours that go back 8 years ago,
Oh, okay.
whereas
So they're
the,
not in question.
correct, right, and this school is not under question,
Okay.
and she has the Minnesota license.
I make a motion, we accept the recommendation.
Second.
Aye.
Okay, and the last application for reciprocity, before we discuss the rules, is for reciprocity of a master barber license from Alabama for Dolores Flores. The certification reflects an initial date of licensure in June of 2014 by reciprocity. Certification of apprentice hours states she completed 1,888 hours between 2004 through 2007. Reciprocity means she completed the apprenticeship program and would have been allowed to work with the apprenticeship license. Ms. Flores provided a letter explaining her experience. My recommendation is that the applicant be approved for a reciprocal license.
What were her total hours?
Apprenticeship hours are 1,888, and that's on page 41 on our last document. Alabama, when they do the apprenticeship, gives them this temporary license, so she started working most likely in 2004 in that program, finished in '07. Her actual license doesn't start till 2014. What I don't see is proof of an examination. I believe through the grandfathering of the apprenticeship program in Alabama, they don't do the state examination. If the board's more comfortable with us requiring that she take ours, that probably.
We always have these questions with Alabama. I think it might be a good idea to require a test.
I second.
Is that a motion? Okay. Okay, so I have that we will be asking her to take both exams, so the full Tennessee exam. Okay. So that is all of our applications for reciprocity, which is wonderful. We're going to go back to, if we could, I would like us to vote on having a chairperson for our committee. This is the full committee for reciprocity, and as of next month, I think what we're going to be doing is one of our committees will meet from 8 to 9, and then the second committee from 9 to 10, and we'll start the full committee at 10 o'clock, so that Rob and I are always at both, and and we'll just rotate. So for those that are having to come early, we'll flip-flop each month if that's okay. Okay, so do we have a motion or anyone that would be interested in a recommendation for electing a chairperson for our committee?
I recommend Amy.
Amy?
Nina.
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 Oh.
I'll second.
I'm looking right at you and said the wrong name.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to elect Nina Coppinger as chairman of the committee. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Congratulations, you're in charge.
Thanks.
Congratulations. Okay. So, Madam Chairman, I will let you kind of guide us on the rules. One of the main reasons for our committee is to try to establish some standard rules, and if the board is okay then giving me those guidelines, I will try to approve those and only bring to you those that just don't meet it exactly, or I'm not comfortable with it, or when legal counsel and I talk, there's just something missing.
Roxanna, if you don't mind, this just for clarity purposes, but try to be precise on the language, because rules, are things that go through the rulemaking process, get approved by the legislature and whatnot, whereas guidelines or board policies which allow you to do things informally are not. So, if we speak about rule changes, then that should be referring to things that go through the rulemaking process, whereas what we're talking about, it seems like right now, is guidelines that they can give you to do office stuff day to day.
Right. Yeah, I believe guidelines, because in the rules, and we discussed this a while back on the Cosmetology Board, that to grant reciprocity, it says in the rules, substantially meet requirements. And so that vague language leaves it open for our discretion and for guidelines. And at one point, back several years ago, we were consistently asking people who were short hours, for example, Florida, 1,200 hours, to finish and complete 300 hours and then take the exams. And then it was expressed to us that was, in a way, holding up progress for people to get employed, and the new administration really wants to be progressive and get people employed a little more quickly. So we started bypassing the hours, and we had some discussion about what does that mean, substantially met? How many hours is that? I don't know. 1,200 is a pretty good chunk of the 1,500 hours. And so then we decided to forgive those 300 hours, for example, for Florida, and just ask that they take the exams and then be granted reciprocity. So, and every case is different, but we've got to make sure that we're in agreement to, be consistent on how we want to do it. Like if somebody comes with, let's see, we had one while ago that had only 1,000 hours. So, we required that they finish the 500 hours.
Because he hadn't tested on either one of them.
So, we just need to decide, and I'm always a little bit unnerved if somebody has never taken an exam.
I think that should just be kind of standard. If they haven't taken it, they need to know our laws and regulations in Tennessee.
And are we going to draw the line at any number of years of experience? Because the calls I have on occasion, and that's why I present them, is, I've been working for 15 years, I just don't have the last 5 in a row, but the thought of taking a practical again is their concern, they don't have. So would we make an exception with the number of years, or do we always just want to have that guideline? If they don't have the 2 exams, we always require that they take it.
Well, if they haven't been working in the last 5 years, they've lost out on industry best practices and rules changes, things like that. How are they actually keeping up? So.
And that's in the rules that they have, to grant reciprocity, they have to have, that's one way you can do it, that they have the current 5-year work history.
If it's more than, if they haven't worked consistently in the last 5 years, then they really need to take some extra steps.
Yeah.
Right.
So it sounds like one of the guidelines that we're going to mark is anytime both examinations are not there or can't be verified, I can send a letter requesting that they take the practical exam if it's missing, or both exams if that would be the case. Is that correct? Okay.
Right, they need to take the missing exam or exams if
Perfect.
they don't have it in their history. Do you think so?
And what do you think about, like, if they come in with 1,200, our state says 15, should we not require it and keep it just straight across the board? So you're not confused with everything?
That 1,500 hours, we consistently hear that people who are out in the field don't have enough training. As a school owner, I think that when I have to cut out 300 hours out of our training program, where am I going to cut it from the curriculum? So Tennessee has those requirements so that we can have plenty of time to work with the students. If they don't have it in another state, they've left something out. I'm concerned about.
And even if they come back to school just to still have to take one of the tests, that would give them their time to review their state laws and sanitation and get them up to par.
But then one thing we heard is that some people were having trouble finding a school that would allow them to just take 300 hours.
We've had an incident last month where someone had asked for reciprocity, and folks, I spent quite a bit of time contacting some schools around who were willing to just work with such a small amount of hours. None of them had problem working with the hours. It's the amount of money that the licensee didn't feel like, I guess, that they could afford to pay what those hours were worth. And frankly, that's a consumer issue as much as it is a regulation issue. The schools were willing to take them, but they are for-profit schools. And I believe the state has some cosmetology schools.
Tennessee Applied Career Technology Centers are a little bit less as far as the cost. It's the individual that Mr. Gillihan tried to assist is going to appear before the board. So she's going to appear before the full board and kind of explain her situation. And you're right, most part of it is that financial hardship. And I think the licensees that are hurting are Florida, New York with the 1,000 hours, the Barber we just saw also with the 1,000 hours. Those are a lot of hours missing. The nail tech and the aesthetics from Florida are a lot of hours missing. But I am starting to get the callbacks from the individuals. We've asked for more hours, and it's a financial burden. And then I think the only other thing for the four on the committee that need to consider is, does the school that's going to decide to take them, how are they going to know which hours they're short? How is the school going to decide, besides the laws and rules, what else to teach them?
There should be a transcript from their previous school.
At least.
Now, other states may not require the schools maintain a transcript, and then therein lies the problem.
test
Because
they need.
then we don't know. So again, it comes back to how many hours. What classes do we cut? What's not being taught that Tennessee's going to miss? Folks, we live in a world where there's a lot of disease out there, and I could relate a long story to you. A friend of mine who went to a nail shop essentially contracted a staph infection. Over time, that led to amputation, and in time, complications led to death. So that's a pretty serious outcome for a manicure. So we do need to be careful, but we don't need to be ridiculous. I know we're allowed to consider financial hardships and issues like that in deciding some of our cases. However, in order to be fair to people from Florida versus people from New York or some other state, we're going to have to craft something that's going to be able to be consistent across the board and still allow us to be reasonable people.
Committee members, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm actually covering a full board meeting at 9 o'clock for someone who's out on maternity leave, so I've got to step out, but I did want to give an opportunity for you guys to ask any last minute questions you had, if there's something I can answer before I head out.
And the debate with the hours, I mean, we could maybe finalize it in the next 5 minutes before we wrap up and get ready for the full meeting, or it could be something that, Ms. Coppinger, you'll give a full report to the group once we're together, just basically what we approved and the guideline we've set so far. And the exam, I think, is real clear, but the hours may not be a bad idea to decide as a full board, especially since we will have heard Ms. Muir kind of explain. And I think you're right, that business decision of the additional cost may be the driving factor on students, and for the safety of the public still may be the way we go. Is there?
Okay, I think you're right. I think we should bring that before the full
Full
board.
committee. Good. Is there any other guideline that we need to set? I have that we are going to always require whichever missing exam, and so I can approve based on that and send a letter.
Work experience, with 5 years of work experience.
But if you look at a case that has a recent 5-year work history, which some of these did, why would they be brought to us?
Simply because, such as Georgia, that state allows the apprenticeship and it allows the regular hours. And if the board is okay then with me accepting what the applicant has put on their application, thank you so much, and approving it, because if the state can't provide a transcript, we can't ask for a whole lot more. If
We're taking them at their word.
I'd have to take them at their word, and that's why I've been presenting them, because I just really don't know which route they've gone for educational hours.
Oh, apprentice or school?
Correct.
And
And unless the state keeps it longer, in many states, New York's one, Georgia, just don't scan the information, and so they can only keep paperwork so long, and so we've got to take them at their word.
But they're licensed, but we don't know exactly which route.
Correct.
I'm not sure that's an issue in Tennessee anymore.
That's correct. And if that's okay, if our guidelines is that it doesn't make a difference whether it's apprenticeship, then I would be given that guideline to be able to approve.
With an apprenticeship program, of course, whatever state they come from has their own laws. Sanitation and techniques, things like that, generally can be taught consistently based on standard textbooks. What does change up, in my opinion, though, is what are Tennessee's laws and requirements. I think personally I would like to see in a reciprocity situation, if it were an apprenticeship situation, at least they need to take a Tennessee law exam based on which licensure they're seeking.
The only thing with that, and I was going to say that before the full board as well, is PSI is having a little bit of a problem when we just recommend the law exam. And the reason is when we do reciprocal, when we reinstate a license, they come in for the law and the practical. That practical exam is a requirement to everybody. We had an applicant who had to take the law, only the law, and they messed up and she had to take the full thing. And so we were very lucky she passed. She was wonderful about it, but it brought that to our attention that they're having to manually track these folks for the law only, and that always leaves room for mistakes. And I would hate to have us apologizing and put someone through the full exam or not, or be set to take the practical when they didn't need it, and then all of a sudden they start to work because they think they're done. So that's the issue with the law. There's no way to just give that exam. We'd be giving the law and the practical.
One thing, if I remember correctly, for example, like Georgia, their apprenticeship program is twice as many hours as,
It is.
so, I mean, it's very time-consuming for them, and, yeah, so, I don't know.
Are we considering the possibility that if the state has an apprenticeship program and a traditional just hours, if they've put it down on the information, the number of hours that they've completed, if they've taken the exams, are we okay with giving me the authority to approve those for reciprocal and consider it that they met our reciprocal
If they've
license?
passed the exams,
If they've passed the exams.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay with that.
Yeah, and also, if they have the current 5-year work history, because that's stated in our law.
It needs to
Very stated.
be both of those.
Okay, so for the states that have the dual, the apprenticeship as well, we will always be requiring the last 5 consecutive years for work experience.
And can we put out a list of schools that will take these people that are liking hours? Maybe have that on file somewhere. If they ask for it, you can just shoot them an email and say, here's a list of the schools of the state that's in your area.
That's available in a report online, is it
Right.
not?
Our schools are available
Sure.
online, yes, on our website. However, I don't know of our 80 cosmetology and 23 barber schools, how many would be willing to do that. I may have to do a mailing here in the next month or so to all the schools and say, for students that are recommended to take additional hours, be they 500 all the way to just 150, would you be willing to consider taking these students? And
It might
have
give them
have a
a
list of those that
resource.
wouldn't.
Yeah, that way they'd have a resource to go
Okay.
by.
Can you state what we decided about the states with apprentice schools as well?
We've stated that I would be able to approve those that have an apprenticeship program versus just the traditional hours, as long as they provide work experience in the last 5 consecutive years and they've taken the examinations. And then we've also said that we would like to have a list of the schools that are willing to take the lower number of hours and with a transcript, assist those students that are going in based on our recommendation for fewer hours. So I will try to get those letters out to the schools and see who we reach back from. who
Say
we
that
hear
one more
back
time.
from. The schools, we would like for the board office to send out letters to basically 100 of our private schools and find out. And I will reach out also to the Board of Regents that regulates the Tennessee Applied Career Schools and have them tell us if they would be willing to accept the fewer number of hours so that students have a resource to go to.
That particular outlet may be the go-to kind of option for these students, because sometimes schools run into an issue with their accreditation that
Right.
wherever they, whatever the student does to accumulate the greater number of hours, that school is held responsible in their accreditation for their pass or fail rates, things like that.
Oh, okay.
So there's an incentive for schools not to accept students other than just financial. I don't mean to sound that way. They simply want to not be put in an untenable position.
So we are, as a committee, we're saying that applicants who are short hours need to complete the hours to meet our requirements.
I think we were going to have the full discussion
Oh, that's
with.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's on the full board.
It's on board. So, and if, just for time's sake, I think we've wrapped up where we're at. If we could have a motion to adjourn, I'll give everybody about 5 minutes so we can get all settled.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We will pause for about 5 minutes and get started right at 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for the first committee meeting. We got a lot done.
Is it Anita's? Anita. Yes.
Morning, come on in.
For examiners will be called to order. At this time, I would like everyone to rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag, and remain standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, one of our board members has had a personal family tragedy. His mother has just passed away. Mr. prayers and our condolences at this time. If you would, join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, and be seated. Oh. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your attendance this morning at the meeting of the board. It's really nice to see such a huge attendance in the audience. We always love to see our folks come and participate in the process. It's the custom of the board here to recognize our visitors and guests. So at this time, if there are any school owners or schools represented here, could I ask you to stand, please, and identify yourself? Wonderful. This is great. Can I start here on my left?
Good morning, I'm Ryan Hurd. I'm from Shear Academy in Crossville.
I'm reading again.
Thank you for coming. Hello.
Good morning, I'm Shantae Randolph with the Old School of America.
Yes, sir.
George Sansel, Tennessee School of Beauty, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you for driving a long way. Yes, ma'am.
Sheila Sama and
Thank you for being here. Yes, ma'am.
Renee Weisinger with the Tennessee College and Applied to
Thank you so much. I missed some folks over here.
Brittany Lynn and I'm with Renee with the Tennessee College and Applied to
Thank you so much. And I see some folks around the back. Are you students? Are you? Thank you for coming. It's great to have you all out here this morning. We're going to get to the business of the people in just a moment. So please make yourself comfortable. There are chairs and seats around. So just be comfortable. Next order of business would be the approval of the October 6, 2014 minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, we would need a motion to accept or approve.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Patricia and properly seconded by Diane to approve the October minutes. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. They're approved.
I could take a quick roll of everyone that is here today. I will start with Ms. Anita Allen, Kelly Barger,
Present.
Nina Coppinger,
Present.
Mr. Bobby Finger, Mr. Frank Ambuza, Mr. Ron Gillihan,
Present.
Ms. Yvette Granger,
Present.
Ms. Judy McAllister, Ms. Patricia Richmond,
Present.
Ms. Mona Sappenfield,
Present.
Ms. Amy Tanksley,
Present.
and Ms. Diana Tiefenteller.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with the appearing before the board. On your iPads, we are on page 3, and we have Ms. Stephanie Brown with Educator Success. We've moved the podium because there is no microphone on it, and it's really important that we are able to hear anyone that appears before the board. So as I call those that are appearing, if you are welcome to take the last 2 seats here. Make sure the mic is near you, and we've also got the seats at the top. So if I could have Ms. Stephanie Brown. Ms. Stephanie Brown is presenting a request for approval of continuing education seminar to be provided in Memphis. On your iPads is general information about her, the class. The dates that she's requested are August the 23rd and 4th, September 27th and 28th, and October the 4th and 5th for 2015. Available for your reviews the material that she has, and she's able to answer any question regarding the seminar she would like to be approved for. Again, if the board decides to do this, a board member would need to go to definitely the first, if possible at all, the first session, and then based on that, we can make any changes needed.
Ms. Brown, good morning, and thank you for coming to join the board here. If you could you tell us a little bit about your program that you're presenting?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
The program that I'm presenting, the seminars, is the Educator Success. It's about creating the culture of the classroom and being able to sustain it once the culture is created. I've had the privilege to be able to teach in the private school sector, which was Paul Mitchell School, as a core learning leader. I've had the privilege to be able to teach for Vaterac College, which was on post-secondary level, and also teaching in Shelby County school systems as a cosmetology instructor. And what I've noticed that there is a gap when you go into the different sectors of teaching, and I think that it's very important for the enrichment of the learner's success that if there is a consistency in the teaching styles, because once a learner leaves, if they're in the high school part of cosmetology and they go into a post-secondary or a private sector, what happens is maybe they've are used to one teaching style, but when they get into those different sectors, there's a gap, and the learner sometimes lose their momentum to be able to complete cosmetology school. And it's only because sometimes there's a frustration because of the miscommunication between the learners and the instructors. So I just believe that if there is a consistency with creating that culture and being able to sustain it, then we'll see an even more phenomenal outcome.
Do you generally use audiovisual equipment? Do you have, tell me something about your program. How do you intend to do that?
I do use audiovisual because when teaching in the Shelby County school systems, we had to use the projectors, the LEDs, and also being able to use now what you all have yourselves, iPads. We could actually get them from the libraries for the learners' use. And so myself, and when I'm having seminars, I do incorporate all of these to be able to keep the classes relevant. If you go to www.stylishcoachforever.org, there is a list of the classes that I myself have had every other couple of months in the salon. And this is something that I do for free because teaching is just a passion. And so when I'm having these classes, then we have visual aids available, and I also make sure that I'm using the Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence because everybody learns differently. And this is one of the, in this seminar, this is one of the driving points of the multiple intelligence.
Members, do you have any questions?
I do. Ms. Brown, have you provided us with the list of instructors for this program and their education and experience?
Yes, ma'am, it's my resume, and my resume has my teaching experience, and it has what I do now outside of being a salon owner. I travel all over the United States as an accreditor for independent college and career schools. So I'm the one that looks at a curriculum. I go in and I say if accreditation can remain in the school. That is something that I do with ACICS, which is a firm out of Washington. It is the #1 accreditation council for schools.
Do you have other instructors for this?
Right now, starting the program, being that the seminar being that it's new, it's myself for the 2-day seminar.
Teaching every class?
It's a 2-day seminar, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So you're not considering any other instructor to help you with the seminar?
I will be considering, but just starting it off, it will be myself because I'm highly trained in multiple intelligence. And this is something myself that in the past, that at TSU, they did offer a course on multiple intelligence for the educator, and then which is through the Milady. And so I have a certificate from that, and then also being a prior learning leader, a core learning leader with Paul Mitchell Schools, we had to, be trained extensively in multiple intelligence.
And you're a master educator certified with Milady?
A few hours short. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. So
Yes.
will you have a limit on the amount of, I guess, instructors who can attend your seminar?
It won't be a limited, but when I was speaking with Ms. Roxana about it, I mean, there's 2,000, right at roughly 2,000 educators, okay? And so starting off, I mean, I know that there could be a chance that it may start off with a minimum of 5, it could be 10, it could be 20, it could be, so I'm just excited about getting it started. And then as it grows, then there is room for adding instructors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a date for this? I'm sorry.
Yes, she's selected 3 different dates. They don't clash with any of the 2015 seminars. August 24th, 23rd and 24th, September 27th and 28th, and October 4th and 5th of 2015.
There will be one seminar or 3?
3 different dates, 2 days for each. So she's asked for 3 different dates.
Oh, okay. Same seminar?
Same
Yes,
seminar,
ma'am.
yes.
Gotcha. Thank you. And how many current,
Right now, we have the 3 main university providers that are the Memphis, the Tennessee State here, and then the Knoxville group. And we have expertise that has 4 sessions for 2015. The Beyond Beauty group started out with 5 sessions. They're down to 3. They realized that 2 of them were with holidays. So we have 5 approved seminar providers right now. And as soon as we're going to look at the Memphis dates here a little later on in the meeting. As soon as we have everybody's dates and approvals, we are going to add the agenda like you had recommended at the last meeting so that instructors looking at options can also look at not only the dates offered, but the material ahead of time and make a decision for their 2015 calendar.
and there's a board member that needs to be present at all of them
At all
as
of them,
well?
yes. And
Okay.
all the ones that, and I attend all of the ones as well. The groups that have more than one date, I will only be attending one just to save on cost.
Right.
And so, but a board member that's closest to that area will also make sure that one member goes to each one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Brown, I did have just 2 quick questions for you here, and then we'll wrap this up. You're listed in your agenda that you have PSI and state board updates. I understand how the state board updates would occur, but have you already made arrangements with PSI to attend, or is that something you're going to present?
That's something that I will be presenting, but I did send an email, and she hadn't responded back to me, so I sent the emails the same time that I sent the email to the state to propose this.
And the last question I have for you is, what is your contingency plan in case you have an accident, you're late, something happens, scheduled for your exam if you don't have any backup instructors?
What I'm doing now is that like I said, I offer the classes for free, and so I've partnered with a couple of other instructors who I will be giving them this seminar information to be able to have them to work with me. But I didn't put them on here because I hadn't had a chance to go through everything that will be presented in the seminar.
We would need a motion if we wish to approve this.
Wait, you just said you haven't had a chance to what? Decide?
Complete everything that's in the 2-day seminar. So that's why I didn't submit them as the people who will be facilitating this because I hadn't completed. This is at the fall of 2015, so I have some time to finish their continued ed with me.
We have the agenda for the 2-day session right here.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this going to change?
It's not going to change. I haven't had the time to finish giving them everything that they need. Forbid if something was to happen to me and someone had to be in my stead, that means that they would have to facilitate this information all the way through. So I'm in the process now of completing that with them, but I didn't submit it because they hadn't finished it. I have up until April with the latest that are working with me to have them completely trained.
Do I hear a motion?
I motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Who was the second? Oh, Ms. Sappenfeld. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve this program. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. And my vote is no. And Richmond has a no. Okay. The ayes have it.
Next, we have appearing before the board, Ms. Rita McDaniel. This is a reinstatement of a cosmetology school license. On your iPads is a new application for Collins School of Cosmetology. They were not able to renew their school license timely, and therefore pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 62-4-121D, Ms. McDaniel has had to fill out a new application, pay the new school application, and get caught up on the renewal fee. She's appearing before the board to explain unforeseen situation that caused for the school's delay, and of course, the request is that she get her cosmetology school license back. Thank you for appearing before the board.
We know how long the license was lapsed.
Basically, with the statute, all cosmetology schools expire August 30th, September 1st. There's a late fee. They've got per statute till September 3rd to renew. And if they don't renew by that date, we have no way but to have them reapply to be reinstated. So it really is since September the 30th.
Thank you for being here, and this is for reapproval.
Correct. And she has the application. I don't know that all the student contracts were needed, given that it's a school that was already there, but again, we've got the floor plan. Everything is there that the statute requires for her to submit. The full payment is there. And my recommendation would be that she be granted the reinstatement of that license. Like I said, she's provided a letter as well with an explanation of the delay.
Do we have any questions from the members?
How long was the school in business before?
We opened in 2010.
Do you currently have students?
Yes.
Were students in attendance at a time during the lapse?
But what had happened is my manager, I have been sick this summer with my back has went out, and she, when I asked her about this, if the license had been renewed or if she had sent the money in, she said no. And I said, that was the day that I called you, and we did it automatically that day. I was unaware that she had not renewed the license.
So you initiated that? You contacted the board?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Well, the board office left at least 3 messages between August 30th and September 30th trying to prevent the school from lapsing. But unfortunately, because she was out, those messages
Right.
might not have reached her.
Right.
But we did pursue trying to prevent this from happening.
Yes, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, my manager, when I asked her, she said that
As a matter of practice, I understand that sometimes things happen in business, and we're all humans. On its face, that's a relatively simple thing, an easy thing to do. What my concern is that there were students there learning and collecting hours and being taught in a school that wasn't licensed at that moment. And is there a probability or a question that those hours could fall into question at some future date? Could we?
I'm afraid if they're taught in an unlicensed facility, they wouldn't be valid.
From the moment that we spoke, which was pretty much, I think, the first couple of days in October, they were told that they could not be operating from then on, so.
the school has been closed.
Yeah.
And I apologize. This will never happen again.
Students that were there, they were just dropped, and are they going to come back to your school?
Yes.
Okay.
In the event that something happens again with you, have you made arrangements for the school to be ran without you so you won't have this problem again?
Oh, yes, I will make sure the license are renewed now. But we had, like I said, it was just an oversight. I apologize. She had told me too that when I asked her about this, my manager thought that we had until October the 30th to renew, and I said,
Are those students going to be charged for those makeup hours? How are they going to deal with that? Okay.
How long a period were they acquiring hours that are now invalid?
a week.
Oh, okay.
With Roxanne, and I made contact with Roxanne and tried to get it,
How many instructors do you have at your school and your cosmetology only?
Recommendation, Roxanne?
Based on the students that they do have, and hopefully this one-time oversight, my recommendation would be that we approve the license.
We put in there something about stipulation if it happens again.
Absolutely, absolutely, we can.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the license.
We have a motion to approve this license.
Second.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Ms. Coppinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Approved. Thank you for coming.
thank you very much for your time and consideration in this matter.
Next, we have a presentation from Zuri Dion. This is a new barber school application. Ms. Dion is appearing before the board to request an approval of the application for Master Academy of Barbering Incorporated. They're located in Knoxville, Tennessee. The floor plan showing a total of 3,000 square feet. The enrollment agreement, curriculum, and the school hours of operation are provided for your review. The application fee had been received by the board office. The school must be inspected by a board member and field inspector before it can open, and they would like the inspection to take place in December. Their plan is to open January 2015. Thank you for being here.
Morning, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
On your layout, I see a conference center. Is that what you're calling your classroom?
Yes.
Yes. 14 stations you have. 15.
There's one to the left.
Have the number of students already enrolled. to open?
Right now, we have the current student that we have signed up in December, because we've just started our advertising, so we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves, set up to come in and sign contracts.
Students for barbers?
There is not for barber
There is
schools
for
right now.
Cosmo.
That is correct. So we always
Okay.
ask for at least one to be signed up so that the full contract agreement can be reviewed and looked at.
I have a question. What are your, you've listed your curriculum. Do you have a program that you're following, or books, or some sort of?
I'm using the My Lady Professional Barbering books,
Okay.
so that's what I'll be teaching off of.
Okay, thank you.
I think everything looks in order. It's very well presented. I'd make a motion to approve. Yeah.
We have a motion by Ms. Sappenfeld to approve. Are there any other questions? Second.
A second.
We do have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it.
Good luck.
Was Ms. Barger?
Oh, yes, Ms. Barker.
Oh, it was for your second.
It was not my second.
Oh, you did the second? I'm
My
sorry.
bad. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Ms.
misheard.
Granger.
I'm sorry, I misheard.
We
But I
got it.
will be able to inspect if you need.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you know the date. Okay.
Congratulations and good luck.
Okay, next on your iPads for your review is a reconsideration of a reciprocal license from Ms. Kamisha Muir, who is appearing before the board. Ms. Muir, thank you. Ms. Muir has written information. The email that you see on page 34 is for you to take a look at. Her reciprocal license application was from Florida. It is a manicurist license with 240 hours and no examination. She's explaining in the email and is here to answer any questions. She's had a difficult time finding a school that would accept her, and then the financial part of that difficulty is the amount that they are wanting to charge her for the 360 hours that the board requested she complete. And so she is asking for reconsideration and is here to answer your questions.
Ms. Muir, I believe this came before the board in last month's meeting. I have a question for you now. Are you actually licensed in your previous state? Were you an apprentice in a previous state?
I am licensed, and also my license had expired on the 31st, which I went ahead in September and renew it. So I had it renewed. And yes, I am still licensed.
The type of matter that the committee's meeting to get some consistent standards.
Yes, it is.
Florida seems.
Well, if I may, I also want to point out that I had applied for the reciprocity in May of this year, and the meeting was supposed to be held on October the 3rd, which after the fact that you guys had get back to me, and that's when I go ahead and look for the schools and stuff like that. The only school, I live in Cookville, so the only school that offered the course is Genesis. They wanted $5,530 just for the 360 hours for me to complete. Because of how much it costs, and I'm currently not working because I was waiting back and forth, and I do look for a job as well, but I was unable to find a job. Therefore, I don't have the financial aspect of it to pay, and they do not offer financial aid. I am a single parent, and I do believe if I get the opportunity to take the test, I would more than qualify to complete that, to go ahead and do both the practical and the theory part aspect of it. Because not only that, while I was in Florida, to my knowledge, we do use the same book as Tennessee. So, and at that time, when I attend school in 2012, it is a, work on your pace basic, and they have night and morning. You could also stay from morning till night, however, it depends on you. And we did complete the whole book. So if you are worried as far as the sanitation process and stuff like that, we had already completed that. And in my documents here, we also completed the HIV, which you guys don't think also do the HIV, but we, as far as completing the HIV course as well. So, I would be honored if you guys would consider to grant me the opportunity to take.
You had completed 240 hours in Florida?
Yes,
in
and I
Florida.
also have tax return documents from 2012, because in the state of Florida, you can work as a manicurist, as doing manicure or pedicure under a licensed professional, not nail extension. So during that time, as you can see, I had received my license in 2013, but I had completed school in 2012, and I had tax return to show for that time period while I was working.
Tell us a little bit about your work experience in Florida.
Well, like I said, I had, work from that time until then. I was not doing nail extension until I received my license. Of course, I also have photographs to show as far as my work and my capability and, my knowledge. As far as knowledge, we did not do a state test, but the test that we did, I scored a 99 on it. So, just saying.
School test?
Yes, but like I said, it was in school, but you was in a classroom by yourself. There was, in the school itself, it has camera overall. So in every angle of that classroom, it has a camera. So there is no, to say if you don't value in-school tests or whatever the case may be, there was, you can play back or ask for evidence as far as that day or time or whatever the case may be.
As I understand it, if I can kind of summarize this just a bit for everybody, Miss Muir had come before the board seeking reciprocity due to the fact that she had such minimum hours in Florida. They were not even half of the hours required by Tennessee. The testing that she's had has been in school, not state sanctioned. Situation as far as enrolling in another school to complete the hours is such that where she lives, it's difficult for her to arrive, to travel somewhere else. The board is allowed to consider economic hardship in some of these decisions. However, we do have guidelines and rules that we have to follow. After our last meeting, I took it upon myself to contact some of the schools in the area to see if we could find some position for her or some school that would allow her to enter at a financial position that would be more attainable. Able to have any success with that. It's not that there are not schools who want to teach, but there are business decisions in schools. It's an economic decision if someone seeks to have a license to do anything, whether it's a barber or anything else. So kind of where we are. There is a state technical school, I believe, Ms. Roxana?
Tennessee Applied Technology Schools.
Okay.
And I don't know for certain if there's one near her or not. I'd have to look closer.
That is one thing that we only came up with this morning. That's sort of where we stand. State technical schools generally are less expensive. If there's not one in her area, of course, you'd have to find transportation. It is not uncommon in the school segment for students to drive 50 or 100 miles to attend school. That is not uncommon. It does present a hardship, though, on many people. Folks have to
I also want to point out that I had get a job offer, but without my license, I cannot start working.
I have just one question. On your transcript from the International School of Health, Beauty, and Technology, the very bottom, it does say total hours in order to graduate, 240, and then it lists total service hours completed as 114. Is that inclusive of 240 or in addition to?
That's the overall grade.
Total service hours completed, 114,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just under the grade.
I'm not sure, but if you calculate the total hours, it should add up to 240.
Okay, just curious.
36.
That could, to kind of guess along the way of what schools do, that could, yeah, it would be the theory or working on the floor, possibly just a separation from the 240. It should be included in the 240.
Included.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Or do we have a motion?
Well, I don't have a question, but as the Reciprocity Committee met this morning, we discussed issues like this and applicants that are coming with a shortage of hours. And so we eventually we'll discuss that and come up with and make a decision about that. And then there's the other side that every case is different. We made a ruling on her. She did what she was supposed to do, and obviously it's not a good choice for her because it's so expensive to get that. If we made an exception for her and felt like she taking the exams would be qualified in her field, then we can make an exception for her, but at some point, we're going to have to be consistent with our decisions about people that are coming in short of hours.
And I think after we discuss that more between the board today and make a decision on what we really want to put into writing,
Right.
Before that, so I would make a motion to accept her.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept.
She needs to take the exams.
Right. She has to take the exams.
To accept her
yeah.
for exams, for both exams.
Right.
If there's no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Congratulations, Ms. Muir.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just thank Nina for bringing up the consistency issue and setting a precedence. I think that's definitely something we need to consider going forward.
And we had discussed at the, when we get to the point for the legal and the reciprocity, each committee will present what they've reviewed. That was our big piece that we left for the entire board to decide on. So we definitely will do that. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have applications for examination. Hold on just. And before we start that, I would like the last person appearing before the board is Ms. Shante Randall came to the office on Friday, so she's was added at the last minute, but I believe that the board could take a few minutes to review. She's made some plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
And is looking ahead for the next meeting to present an application for an online barber school. So Ms. Randall is here to not show you any documentation just yet, but talk to you a little bit about the school and basically the online concept, how she would take care of doing the practical classes. That way, if there's anything that she's missing or needs to be done before the application, the board would be inclined to give her that assistance in knowing what she's missing, as well as legal counsel. Thank you for being here, Ms. Randall.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Good morning, everyone. First, I want to say that this is a vision. All the problems that you guys have announced today, lack of hours, lack of affordability, lack of flexibility, my vision came about a month and a half ago to solve all of these problems, to create solutions for our community. My name is Shantae Randolph, and I'm the Vice President of Lady Barbers United, and we travel all over the world educating people and giving them opportunities to learn business, beauty, and hair. I'm also an educator who've helped Paul Mitchell cultivate their barbering program. I'm also an author, which I'll be giving you guys my book today so that you can learn a little bit about who I am and what I've done. My concept of online barbering, she said that I didn't have anything to show you, but I actually do. If you go to your iPads and you type in AmericanUniversityOfBarbering.com, you will be able to see the website with the mission statement. No?
No,
Then
they
they
can't.
can't. Okay.
And we've
Well,
gotta
on your
make
own
this-
time, I'll submit that information. But right here, I have a prominent citizen who is a firefighter, who has desired to become a barber, but who lacks the ability to get his license. How many years has it been? 3 years he's been waiting because it's too much. The cost is too much, $20,000 plus interest, leaving him kind of debt. And he's been fighting for this for 3 years. And so I want to help citizens like him, people that can't go to work, who drive 50 miles radius, 100 miles, and they have to make these sacrifices. With my online school, it's going to be flexible, affordable to their lifestyle. I have the theory. How is this going to work, you're going to ask me, because I love that question everybody asks. How is this going to work? Well, I've partnered with Salon Centric, who has over 800 stores throughout America, and they're allowing me to utilize their facility of 800 square feet. I know the rules say 1,600 square feet, but if I teach online barbering, the rules, according to the rules, theory will be taught online, which the rules should be modified for those square feet to be in half, to me, in my opinion. So I will be teaching theory at least one day a week, utilizing Salon Centric of Cool Springs. And not only that, but we're utilizing web-based technology, and we're utilizing the system Blackboard, where they log on to take their test, and their participation of online login and completion of assignments. There's a lot of different things that I have, but I'm going to allow you guys to ask me a lot of questions.
Thank you for coming. I believe it sounds like a very interesting concept. There's distance learning going on in lots of fields across the country, and certainly it's an exciting direction to be thinking in. Members, do you have any questions?
Are you currently still a firefighter?
Yes, I am.
And I was wondering, because of your schedule, I know firefighters have those crazy schedules.
Correct.
Would that allow you ever to go to a traditional barber school?
Kind of crazy for my schedule because I'm in Rutherford County, and the gentleman owned the fire department. So our hours was not normal to the regular, which is 24/48. I work 48/48, so on 48, off 48. So it was very difficult. But with this, tremendously would help because I can be at work on our downtime.
Right.
And be able to
But a
do this
traditional school would be,
every day.
yeah, that wouldn't work out for you.
No.
They have day and night classes too. Most schools do.
Yeah, but he's
full-time.
working 48-hour
I'm 48.
shifts.
Yeah, a lot of people are, third shift. It just doesn't work. So.
To add to this, I've just helped someone, Tim Baker, who will be applying to open up a school sometime soon in Chattanooga. I've just assisted him in gaining his instructor's license. So because of my program, my online system tactics, he will be opening his school. I believe he submitted his application. I've helped numerous of students pass the tests with my system, educational system that I've built. And so I think it'll be an opportunity to provide not only that, but you guys have a new system that you guys are trying to approve, the apprentice program. With my online school, after you guys approve this apprentice program, it will be in collaboration with this system that you have.
Thank you for your presentation. I would encourage you to follow your dreams and see where this may take you. I did have a question for our firefighter. How much is the cost to train a firefighter to be proficient at his craft?
Train a fireman?
Yeah. To become trained as a firefighter, what's the cost of your training?
I couldn't answer. That's a government type funding that they get to train us. I'm not for sure the number.
I was just curious because, as barbers and cosmetologists, estheticians, we consider our craft to be a very respectable craft, and sometimes it does take quite an investment of time, energy, and desire to accomplish any worthwhile task. But thank you for coming today.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. I'm not sure if we're permitted to accept the books. Is that?
I wanted to ask Rob anyway, just based on our laws and rules, how does all that fit in?
Quite clear, you have to have 1,600 square feet. Contracting issue to obtain it, the rules don't really address that, but if you are using a facility that you don't own by contract, it still has to meet.
Have to have its own separate entrance and stuff.
There are a number of
Everything
statutory
will require
requirements.
that.
I apologize. I wanted to respond to that rules. I've read over the rules, and there's, however, a comma in that rule that says that must attain a theory room. So if theory is online, then that particular rule should be modified of the square feet, because there will be no longer a required need for theory room.
I think the rule's been interpreted the way it's been enforced for some time, and precedent's been established. So the change of rule would have to be done through the appropriate process.
Is there any further questions or discussion? Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are on page 39, the application for examination. Applications for examination for the following individuals: Kimberly Butler, Adrienne Cameron, Robert Evans, Philip Johnson, Bakira Kasama, Calvin Lowe, Amanda Rock, Daisy Turner, Carolyn Jackson, Lolita Finch, Aubrey Jahar, and Roderick Nicholson. All applications have felonies. All applicants have felonies. Their applications to take the examination are submitted for the board approval. You will see before you the letters from the individuals and recommendation from the schools they attended. And we need a motion and a second to approve their applications or make any changes as you see fit. Each applicant will receive an agreed order that they sign for a 2-year probationary period. Upon the receipt of those orders, the board approves them to test with PSI.
So each school that these applicants have attended, they have written a letter of recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. Since we just get these today, I don't really take time to read through them, but I'm sure you do, and that they have all been recommended, and there's no issue during the school process with these applicants.
That is correct, and that is one of the main reasons we wait till after they finish the school, so the school at least has gotten to know them for a period of anywhere from 3 months to a full year, depending on the license they're requiring.
I have a question that kind of is related to this, but are there any cosmetology programs in any of the penal institutions?
The facilities? Yes, there are for mostly barber schools and barber programs, but even the female facilities, they run the curriculum from the Board of Regents. And so they teach at the schools, and PSI actually goes to 3, if not 4, of the institutions to let them take the examinations. Yes. So they work that out, and a lot of the inmates they work within the institutions to do the haircutting. And so they're working there, and they need their license in order to do that. So I don't know if on this particular request, but you've probably seen them, and you will, where they're requesting the license and possibly not going to get out of prison for a very long time, if ever, but they still follow the program.
So some of these applicants may still be incarcerated?
That's correct.
Okay.
I don't believe any in this particular list, but
Yeah, I think-
we had them last.
These all had like private schools, I think. and
Correct.
So, which means they would be not incarcerated anymore.
Correct.
Well, I make a motion, we accept with a signed agreed order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Was that Ms. Sappenfeld?
I would not second that. no.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to accept these with an agreed order. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. Next, on your iPads for your review are our international applicants. We have two in front of you. We have an application to test with hours in cosmetology from India for Rupalbin Patel. Translated documentation includes the transcript stating Ms. Patel completed her education in 2006 with 1,750 hours. The recommendation is that the applicant be approved to take the Tennessee examination. Both applicants are here today if the board has any questions for them.
Have this person come to the front, please.
Yes, absolutely. Ms. Patel?
Good morning.
Hello. Thank you for being here.
Ms. Patel's English is easier for me to understand, so if there's any specific things I can help. I actually own Shear Academy, which is a barber school in Crossville, Tennessee, and she is actually enrolled at our school taking hours to become a barber. Her goal is to become dual licensed. When she came to our school with that amount of hours from India, and then by her attending the school, we've seen it's obvious that she got the training. She wouldn't be at the position she is or able to do what she's able to do on our salon floor if she hadn't had some prior training. Plus working with the federal government to get them approved for financial aid and so forth, we did have to go through all the ups and downs of making sure that the paperwork and so forth is correct, that her high school was correct. So I know that the forms that she had sent in are all very relevant and are factual. Through my own personal research of having to allow her and her sister into school as well. So
she enrolled in your school?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so now you realize she has the training and could possibly test?
Yes, ma'am, but it was more of they're more interested in having both licenses. So it was more their goal as well to become a licensed barber in the state of Tennessee with the hours and testing as appropriate. And then after them being in school for a while, and then explaining to me, getting the English to work together, realizing that they had that many hours in India and had been working in India as stylists, then it was under my recommendation that you should try to get that license as well, or at least be able to test for it, because they have the hours, they have the experience, and there was just no reason, in my opinion, that they didn't try to dual license, especially with the fact that they're going to be a licensed master barber at the end of the program anyway.
Are they enrolled for the full barber program or this?
Yes, sir, 1,500 hours, yes, sir.
Does she currently, what license does she currently have, or she and her sister?
She has no license currently in the state of Tennessee or in the United States.
I mean, does she have a license from India?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. She
Which
has
one?
a cosmetology license from India.
So she will take the full barber course and then test after that's completed. But right now, she's requesting to take the cosmetology exams?
That is correct.
I make a motion that we accept or approve for her to take the test.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any other discussion? Who do we have for the second? Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Congratulations.
Very much. Now, I will continue to stay right here for
Yes.
your next one.
Next on your iPads is a cosmetology license as well from India, and the hours are the same amount, 1,750. She completed them in 2008, and this is Ms. Rajiniven Patel. Translated documents are there for your review, and it is the same request. She's also enrolled for the Barber program, but she's requesting to be approved to take the Tennessee examinations for cosmetology.
And board members, I have the exact same thing. They started at the school together. They're virtually within a few short hours of each other. So it is the exact same situation. There is a little bit of a time difference in their licensing over in India, but you'll see it's still plenty of years and plenty of work, of time experienced in India to do this exact same process that I just mentioned.
So assuming they both test and they both pass, then would they wouldn't need the 1,500 hours, they would only need half of that, is that correct?
At that point, they could go ahead and stop their training and then test under their barbering for the 750-hour requirement. But what our personal goal that we've discussed is for them to continue this program, get a lot more of the education, the theory part especially, make sure that there's an understanding of the English translation, and then at that point go take the cosmetology exam so they're a little bit more versed, not coming into Tennessee being able to fully understand a cosmetology theory book. Then it allows us to help them get to the general knowledge that's on both sides of the field here. So it allows them to be more prepared for the cosmetology test by finishing our program as well.
I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Ms. Richards to approve. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, noes? The ayes have it.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
If anyone needs to take a break, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we will keep going. We are under our miscellaneous applications. Before the board today, we have a request for an approval of a change of ownership for Helen Nails. Appearing before the board are the two individuals, and one of them is the owner and their legal counsel. So if you give me a minute, Ms. Barber, go right ahead. Your mics are on if you're going to speak. Before you is the application on page 106. Because of the severity of the notice of violation, the change could not be completed until the complaint was resolved. The new owner is appearing before the board as well. Provided for your review is the signed consent order agreeing to the revocation of a shop license. Again, this shop is Helen Nails located in Mont Juliet, Tennessee. The shop owner is here, Mr. Huen Gian, the current owner of Helen Nails. The legal department has received the paperwork along with the $2,000 payment on Friday. Mr. Gian is appearing before the board with legal counsel to answer any questions that you have, and he is requesting a change of ownership for the shop to open under the ownership of his brother, Mr. Tuyen Gian, and a new shop manager who would be Ann Gian. So those are the documents that you have. Per the last board meeting, a change of ownership also requires proof of the business license change, and that is the document for you on page 107 that shows that they have filed the change of business license with the city over to Mr. Tuyen Gian.
Thank you for appearing before the board.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Paratelli. Mr. Zhang has some difficulty with the English language. My purpose here is to assist with that if there's need for that. Also, just to give you just some minimal background, Mr. Zhang came to this country in 1993 when he was 18 years old. His family has run a manicure business in Memphis for many, many years. He has been licensed since 1996. This is his first violation. It is a serious violation. He's here to not excuse, but to try to explain, it is a bribery, and it's a serious charge that in his culture somehow would have seemed less serious. He is a U.S. citizen. He understands the seriousness of the charges, and he's here to answer any questions, and I will assist if needed.
Roxana, is this the case that the manager of the shop we saw at the last board meeting?
No, this is a different
Different
shop.
ca- different
Similar
shop.
situation, but different shop, yeah.
Change ownership over to his brother.
That is correct. That's the desire, yes. And a new manager would be coming in. After this, you will see both of the individuals' licenses are also the next thing that they're signing consent orders to revoke both of the licenses that were involved. And so consequently, the shop would need a new manager. And so we'll look at those licenses in a minute.
What will be his role in the new shop?
Currently, he will have, the new shop will be run by, his brother would be the owner, and his sister would be the manager.
I have a question. So he would no longer work in the shop?
Well, he understands that he's turning in his license today. He would like to get a new license and participate in the business, but he understands that he has to, as part of the consent order, give up his license and pay the fine. And that's what he's doing for the shop license to be given up and his manicurist license to be given up, the one that he's held since he was a little older than 18.
Okay, so he also understands that he cannot work in the shop until his license is obtained.
So you were the shop manager? No.
Before.
Shop.
Yeah,
shop
before.
Owner?
Yeah.
And you had unlicensed manicurist?
Oh, yes. Yes.
How many? Were those, I'm just curious, were those two relatives of yours? No? Did you know they were unlicensed?
Yes.
Well, can I ask you the question? If you knew they were unlicensed, why did you allow them to work in the shop?
So because on that day we have the shorthand and we have appointment for the wedding about a couple of weeks ago, and someone with unlicensed on that day, I thought on the Friday, July 20, yeah. And so
Had two unlicensed people working there. There was a wedding. They were shorthanded due to a wedding. The two people who were unlicensed were licensed in other states, it's my understanding.
Roxana, what was the recommendation from your office?
I will let legal counsel guide you.
It was really to leave it up to you. I mean, we've resolved the matter here, and they've asked for reapplication, so it's really, we don't recommend anything.
What we're really considering here is to approve a new license for a new manicure shop, new management, that the family is still tied together.
Correct. And the only thing that I would bring up with the shop is the application is for a brand-new owner. So it would be like you selling the shop to someone else, and I don't know that there'd be a reason to not approve the new owner. The manager, the new owner owns shops, several shops is my understanding, in different places. The manager, as you all know, must be present, a manager must be present at all times. My concern with the manager is her home residence is Memphis, and she manages shops in Memphis. I believe that you'd need an explanation of how that is going to be possible, because the manager must be present at this shop. And then in a minute, you will hear the revocation for their individual licenses and have to make a separate decision. But if you're approving the shop license for the brother and the sister, it's just the question of, will they be living here, at least the manager?
That's an excellent question. How are we going to resolve that difference for the manager living so far away?
Right now, my sister and my brother live in my house, and my sister is management for the hair and nail, and my brother is the owner, the new owner.
And where will they live?
They live in the Mount Juliet now.
They've already moved.
What is the Memphis address?
Memphis address is in the 2728 Barber Creek, the Memphis, Tennessee, the zip code 38128.
But no, I'm sorry, I wasn't very clear. Anne has listed her address as Memphis.
Yes.
When did Ann move here?
She moved here on the last week.
So Ann is no longer the manager of the shop in Memphis?
Yes, right. No longer. So,
Will Ann be able to be in the shop full-time as a manager?
Yes, ma'am.
Members, as far as my understanding, and please correct me, as a new shop, we have no reach into what they may or may not be doing. We can only accept it on face value that they're going to operate correctly. There's something about this that just doesn't feel right to me personally, that I'm afraid that we may have some issues, but everybody needs a path to redemption. Everybody needs an opportunity to move forward, I guess. Would it be inappropriate to approve this new application and request some further monitoring in the future for the shop? We have clean owners, clean records, so there's no reason to unduly make them meet any requirements, but
Perhaps monitor it through field inspections?
And we can, by statute, we have to meet annual inspections, so that means once a year. If the board is inclined to do more than that, we can put that in. And inspections, of course, are random. We don't ever set them. We don't
Right.
announce that we're coming in.
Right.
So it would be that the board, if they approve the application, is requesting that more inspections be required than the usual. And that would be fine. That would be a note that we would put into the cycle that the inspectors have.
That would be the only way I would approve it. Just so that there's
Probation period or
an eye
something?
kept on it.
Mr. Herndon, have there been any previous complaints against the new owner or the new manager at their, you said there were other locations that they currently own and manage?
Unfortunately, with our system right now, the owners themselves are not, we don't have a good list of how many shops an owner owns. When we have the new system, there will be, we will be requesting social security numbers so we can tie ownership of shops. Right now, we don't know how many shops the brother owns in Memphis. So the shop that we were able to review had no complaints, and the sister's license has no complaints. But I don't know how many other shops she might be a manager in, and if they've had history, and I don't know how many other shops the brother owns. They may be able to answer that for you, but I don't have that because of that lack of data, I guess.
have any idea? Do you know how many shops your brother or family members own?
brother own another shop?
No, no.
What about your sister?
She owned about two or three stuff before.
Before?
Yeah,
But-
before about 10 years, 15 years ago.
But currently, neither one of them have a shop that they own and are working in. This is going to be their one entity coming to Mont Juliet, is what you're saying?
Before they came here?
Yes.
Did your brother or sister have a shop that, or they live here, will they have any other duties here other than to run the new shop?
No, right now they come to the Majurat for the shop. My father own the new salon, and my sister the manager my salon Helen Nail.
Will they have any other jobs to do?
No, right now they don't have all the job.
I'd like to recognize our legal counsel for questions.
Because we know there's a family connection, just as a matter of insurance for the board, we would like to recommend an agreed order for felony convictions as we do for our felons for 2 years. Violations. If a violation is committed in that time, then you will be revoked.
It's for the shop, the manager, all?
It's a shop right now.
Members, you've heard the recommendation. Is there any discussion on the recommendation so that we can? We have a motion.
I would make a motion that we agree with Mr. Herndon's analysis of how we can move forward with this, that we would approve it conditionally with the probation and more field inspections. Because even with the felons, I mean, without inspections, we're not really sure what they're doing unless they were rearrested or something.
Ms. Coppinger, do you have a question?
No. Thank you, though.
So we have a motion to approve with a consent order? Agreed order, I'm sorry.
The way that we handle our felon applicants.
Yeah, the signed agreed orders, what, basically the same thing with the 2-year probation? I think that's great. And I second it.
We have a motion that's properly seconded. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion's approved. The motion was approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next, and they're welcome to stay. I think we might change when it's time for the previous manager, but right now, we have a reinstatement request for a manicurist license for Mr. Hong. How do you pronounce your last name?
Zhang.
Zhang. Mr. Hong Zhang, provided is the consent order agreeing to revocation of his license. The legal department received this paperwork along with the $2,000 payment on Friday. Mr. Zhang was the owner of Helen Nails. I believe the previous question was that he was a manager and maybe misunderstood, but he was the owner of Helen Nails, which is located in Mont Juliet. At the time, unlicensed activity was allowed. So the consent order is for the revocation of his personal license. And his request to the board is, I guess, guidance on how and when he could apply to get that back.
With his consent order, he has surrendered his license.
Correct, that is correct.
Okay.
And the shop and the individuals are effective Friday, they were all.
I would suggest that we would do the same consent order. If he could have his license, we would enter into the same consent order that would be automatically revoked with the same probationary period that applied to the shop.
Well, this is a bit different because they actually committed the violation.
Shop was an innocent entity under the new license.
Individuals actually violated the law.
The one that did the bribe, attempted bribe?
They were unlicensed. The bribe in unlicensed activity. Obviously much more serious.
I think that maybe we could, since we're monitoring the business, that maybe we could set aside a decision on his relicensure, and see how it goes at the shop with the brother and the sister and monitor that. Maybe have him appear before the board again in a year.
When he surrendered his license, it's just gone. That's correct. Okay.
This is more like a felony charge is what this could be, right?
Yes, it is.
Have we had this come before any previous board with the bribery charge?
Yeah, you approved these consent orders at the
Well,
last meeting.
before this particular instance.
No, I don't think so.
And in his country, they don't think much about doing this, is what you
Well,
were saying?
I'll just tell you what my client told me when I explained to him how serious it was, and he gave me an example. He said, if you try to catch a plane in Vietnam, you have to take cash with you because your bag doesn't get checked without giving somebody some additional money. You don't get on the plane without getting somebody some additional money. What he did in this instance was the inspector came in, he held up his wallet that had either 50 or 100
Yeah, 100 bill on the top.
on the top of it. And the inspector immediately, called, realized it was something. This is a man that, this is all he knows. This is the only incident he has ever had since he's been licensed. It's his livelihood. It's his ability to earn a living. That's why I stood. He had said to me, they can take my license away. I swear I will never do it again. He had no idea the ramifications when this occurred. True, he's been in this country. I won't make excuses. He's been in this country. He's a U.S. citizen. He's been in this country to know how it works, but this is the first encounter he'd ever had with an inspection like this. So it's not justifiable, but it is a cultural thing. So if you look at his culpability and what he's had done well and never had an issue like this before this one incident when that occurred. And when it occurred, they wanted to know who the unlicensed people were. He called them back in. The inspector spoke with them. He's agreed to pay the fine. He immediately agreed to the revocation of his license, realizing how serious it was. If I could suggest, and I believe this had happened in the last hearing, to require him to take the test again, to learn the law again that applies to this, and then let him reapply once he's done all that.
How long has he been over here in this country?
He's been here since 1993, when he was 18 years old.
Previous meeting included a shop with a similar situation. No one had their personal license revoked, though. I just wanted to clear that up because the individual that did the bribery was not a licensee, or at least a manager or owner.
I apologize. I stand corrected. I was not aware of that.
To surrender your license, I think, and immediately request to be reinstated doesn't really seem to have, in my mind at least, in my opinion, I would, at a minimum, want to see at least 2 years without, and then reappear before the board for a decision, and the board may reconsider.
I have a question. Was he ever aware of the Tennessee laws?
Well, he was to the extent, I guess, that he had to be licensed, that's on the test, but were you aware, are you asking, was he aware, was it wrong that he did that?
Yes, the Tennessee laws, period, in reference to his to his job as a owner?
He said he knew that he had unlicensed folks working in his shop that day. He's admitted that. But he said for business purposes, he let them work anyways.
Were you aware that bribery was wrong
Yes, ma'am.
and you did it anyway?
So on that day, I nervous and I concerned about myself. That's why I hired someone without a license. I'm sorry about that. I'm apologize.
I'm kind of agreeing with Chairman some way that some kind of punishment should be issued, because for him to surrender his license and then we say, okay, go right back just because you admit it doesn't really say a lot. That can start a whole chain of people doing that. So there must be something done before we can actually give those licenses back.
As business owners, we've all been overbooked, but we didn't snag unlicensed people to work.
And you're correct.
Have you
Stuck to
taken
that.
the Tennessee exams?
Yes, ma'am.
You have? I can kind of see the cultural differences in how maybe that bribery thing, he didn't think the way we do about it. Of course, now you know you can't get away with bribery.
Yes.
But he stated that he knew that before he attempted bribery.
She was saying, you know, from his culture, they do, you know, they give money to get things done, like get on a plane and all that. But what really disturbs me is the unlicensed individuals. I don't want to be having a wedding and go into a shop and have someone unlicensed working on me. And that disturbs me more than anything. And you knew that, and you did it because you didn't want to turn away business. And it's still that we have to protect the integrity of and safety of our business. And I'm not sure. I mean, that to me is serious, that you knew and you did it anyway, and just for business sake, you had unlicensed people in there working on consumers. So that really disturbs me.
And just to add to that, Ms. Coppinger, he knew that and he did that, and on top of that, the bribery. So there was no remorse that day of what he did.
I just think that, you know, you've got somebody there that's not licensed, you can get any kind of diseases passed if something's not sanitized for the clients. And you're just putting the whole public safety at risk by even offering somebody to come in there without a license.
Do we have a motion in response to this?
I make a motion to deny at this time and later come back under review.
I would second that.
Okay. The motion is to deny and ask him if he'd like to return to the board no sooner than 2 years. Second?
I'll second it.
And we have a second, Ms. Sappenfeld. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes have it.
Next is a very similar request. This request is, again, to reinstate a manicurist license. This is for Ms. Hua Thai Kim Duong, provided is the consent order agreeing to revocation of her license. The legal department received the paperwork and $1,000 payment on Friday. Ms. Duong was the manager of Helen Nails, located in Mount Juliet, at the time of the unlicensed activity was allowed.
Has this shop been inspected before?
Yes, this shop had normal
So they
inspections
knew.
annually. This was the first year that this issue came up, so their history prior to this did not include unlicensed activity.
So
They knew the procedures for the
yes.
inspections.
Yes.
And
But basically, she's asking for the same thing to
That is correct.
get her license back.
That is correct.
Without the element of bribery.
She was the manager
Was the
of
manager. Yes.
the shop that did the bribery.
Per the statute, the owner and the manager, at least in a cosmetology shop, specifically have the same responsibility, if you will.
We have no other choice but to make the same ruling we just did. However, we do have an option to lessen maybe the time frame since she was not involved in the bribe.
Do you have anything to say?
I am the manager on the shop that time, but the thing he did like he right, I don't know about that. I just know about like two unlicensed work in the shop because I work under control him because he the boss. So
Were you instructed to ignore the license, or is that something you chose of your own free will?
I did know like the unlicensed work in the shop is not allowed. I know that nobody unlicensed can work in the shop. I know the law because I learned in the school. That day, like he the boss, and then like we know like we have appointment, like we for the wedding party, and then we cannot cancel. I just know about like two people like, unlicensed work in there.
Why should the board reinstate your license? Why should we approve this?
Oh, because like I just do nail for living, so I just need the license like for work. Even like now I don't work for him, but I need to work and I have to pay for my bill. And like the thing like because I took a long time for my license, I took about like over 3 years. And like by English, I take a test in Tennessee, so I really need my license.
Are you still working at the same salon?
Right now, I don't work because I don't have license
Okay,
because
so
I
don't-
know that my license revoked, so I cannot work anywhere.
You were the manager and you were not aware of any of this going on at the time, or you were? You were aware?
She was aware.
So there has to be some type of consequences for it.
You heard enough?
I think that around the same lines as the owner, but maybe not as long, because she was aware, but she was going under her boss's instructions. Is that correct? Okay.
So would you be making a motion to have the same as the previous with 1 year?
Yes, I'll make that
suspension?
motion.
And reappear before the board?
All right, how long was the period?
1 year.
1 year, yep.
And reappear before the board. Do we have a
Yes.
second?
Second.
Ms. Richmond, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. You will reappear before the board with no sooner than a year if you'd like to have it reinstated. Okay, you can reapply.
Thank you. We are on page 130 on your iPads. We have a request for, the letter is presented for you, for your review from Ms. Brittany Johnson. She is requesting that, you'll see the letter that she used the certification she has for eyelash extensions in lieu of needing a cosmetology or esthetician license. She is a registered nurse, and she's also registered with Extreme Lashes in 2014. Ms. Johnson wanted to appear before the board, but she had a conflict. I believe someone on her behalf, if you have questions, would appear, but basically I explained that our licensing requirements were pretty much set, that you needed to have the manicure, the esthetician or cosmetology in order to be able to do the eyelashes. The documentation there is provided, shows the certification that she has. Again, she does have the nursing, but she does not have the licensing that we require.
Members, I believe that at this time I need to recuse myself from this because I have personal knowledge of these young ladies.
Hi, welcome. Okay. I'm assuming you weren't aware that you needed a cosmetology license to practice in a salon.
Correct. When we were first inspected a year ago by Mary Ellen, she looked at Brittany's license as a RN, and there was no question at that time. Brittany called the nursing board, and they said that is fine for her. The nursing board requires continuing education and to be in practice to keep their license active. And the nursing board, excuse me, the nursing board is allowing the license or the practice of her eyelash extensions to keep her nursing license active. Does that make sense? A nurse has to be in practice to keep their license active. The nursing board is allowing her practice on eyelash extensions for that.
For her continuing ed? For her continuing education?
No, for
her practice.
For her practice. The nursing is different than like the cosmetology board. Like if we don't want to work for 2 years, we can just keep renewing our license and we can go back to work. The nurse board doesn't allow that. They want you to be practicing for so many hours under that license.
I'm sorry, I may not have caught it at the beginning, but who are you and what's
I'm
your
the
title?
salon manager, and that's
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm the owner.
You could just state your names for the record. That'd be great.
Jessica Dodds.
And Haley Herbert.
Thank you.
And if I could, okay, so we're talking about a cosmetology shop. That's one of our concerns. Within a cosmetology shop, you must do what is licensed under our board, unless you're working under the supervision of a doctor. But that would be, or a dermatologist or the medical board. But within our shops, the licensing that is required to do eyelash extensions right now would be our licenses. And so that's the requirement. Ms. Dotz, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name?
Haley Herbert.
Thank you, Haley.
So question, Brittany Johnson is the nurse, is that correct?
That's correct.
And she's a licensed nurse.
That is
and she's
correct.
performing eyelash extensions in a cosmetology shop. But she is not a licensed cosmetologist.
Correct.
What are they requesting?
They're requesting a waiver of our requirements so that she can be allowed to do that in a cosmetology shop because she has the certificate through this eyelash certificate program, and she is allowed to do it with her nursing, which again has nothing to do with what our shops allow.
Okay.
She could do this at another shop.
She could.
Or a
Under a
mitzvah.
doctor.
That is correct.
And that's perfectly legal.
If the nursing or the health department allows that, that would be their board.
Since she's doing it in a cosmetology shop, it falls under us.
Or shop
And so
license
that's just not
requirements.
I think this
legal.
just opens a can of worms.
You need to
with
just
you,
stick to the
Amy.
laws. Yeah.
Whatever the law states, I think that's what we need to enforce.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Motion to deny.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly seconded. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. I'm sorry.
Way to, she was considering going back to esthetician school, and she has built up a clientele during this time. Could she get a grant for during while she's enrolled as a student to continue practicing on her clients?
She probably, after 200 hours, she could bring her clients into the school and do them.
Sure, if you have a school in your area, you could probably talk to them about that.
Now that this has already been ruled on, can I ask a question? Why is it exactly that she was allowed to be doing this? Was there some instruction that you'd received?
She called the nurse board.
Oh, the nurse board.
And
Okay.
then when we were inspected by the Board of Cosmetology and she checked all of our license, she asked what Brittany did, and Mary Ellen approved it then. And then when we were inspected 2 weeks ago, the new field inspector came back with a different decision.
It would be my assumption, based on that, which I believe, is that the previous inspector would have thought that they were working under the guidance of a doctor and under that exception that we allow, and therefore meet those. But with new training and field inspectors being more aware of certain things, they realized that that license to do what they were doing, because there was no doctor working there, meant they were not following our code.
Okay.
And this, Brittany could go to work in a doctor's office.
Absolutely.
And tomorrow and
Absolutely.
continue on with what she's doing. It just needs to be under the right licensing, correct? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are on page 150. Well, I've ruined my iPad. We're looking at the University of Memphis and their information. They were not able to present at the last meeting. Before you is the information for their 2015 seminar date and location, as well as the material. They have requested Sunday and Monday, June 7th and 8th of this year, of 2015. The seminar is going to be held at a new facility within the university. It is located in Collierville. It's much easier to access and has free parking, so they've moved to this setup and are very excited. At this point, we need an approval for their date and location, and they would then be the last of the seminars that we had ready to complete the information we have on our website.
I would make a motion to approve their new location and the date.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Ms. Barger to accept. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and I believe we need to take a little break for just a moment.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is there a deadline for submitting, are we finished with seminars for next year, 2015?
There is nothing in the statute that says that we have a deadline or can't submit always. That's not to say that the board has to continue approving dates, but there is nothing. As long as the seminar provider presents to the board the material, the explanation, the dates don't clash, there's no deadline. What I've encouraged the last group to do is quickly do a presentation so that we give instructors, I think, a good feel for what's ahead for 2015. But we have no, probably nothing in the statute that allows us to not allow them to present and ask for the dates, if that's your question.
But you asked the universities to present by
Yes.
last board meeting.
Correct.
But
Correct. So new ones probably could still present and request. And if the board felt that the 2015 calendar was already full, we could go based on that. But we'd have to probably still consider their application.
Okay.
I think at that point, I'd really like to see the calendar, and we've discussed this, just, I don't want to overcommit this group if we all need to be attending those.
That sounds wonderful.
And then there is a review process, correct, of?
Yes, and again, if, with the first one, because we just approved a group, so next year we're going to have 2 brand-new groups. On the first session, if there's a concern at all, we would have to turn that around fairly quickly, because for marketing reasons, they probably already are marketing to the second class, since both of the new groups have more than one session. Okay? So we're taking a break?
At this time, it's 10:45. We'll reconvene at 10:30, I'm sorry, 11 o'clock. Okay, 15-minute break.
How are you?
This meeting of the Cosmetology and Barber Board of Examiners is now back in session. Ms. Roxana will proceed with the next item on your agenda.
Thank you very much. We are back. We are on page 141 of your iPads, if I could get everyone ready to continue. This is in compliance with the Public Chapter 863 and 818 regarding post-secondary education. Before you is a request for Southern Institute of Cosmetology. They are located in Memphis, and they are requesting that we approve them for post-secondary education.
Motion to approve.
Second.
motion, seconded by Mr. Granger to approve. Is there any discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Approved.
Thank you. Next is Buchanan Beauty College of Pleasant View. They're providing a letter from Tammy Irvin. He's the clinical director, or she's the clinical director for the Cosmetology School. The request is to have the campus inspected for the addition of an esthetician program. They would like to launch the program in January 20th of 2015 is their request. And a board member would need to go and inspect to make sure that everything is there for that setup.
Is this in East Tennessee or I don't, East Pleasant?
Pleasant View, I think so.
I'm not sure where that is.
I don't have the address in front, well, here it is, hold on, camp's located at 2008 Highway 48 East Pleasant View. That's right. And we can determine who the board member would be later, so we don't have to worry about that now. It would be approving for them to add that program.
Is there any additional design or floor change?
No, they've got plenty of square footage. It would be sectioning it off to have the necessary equipment and.
Adding it to it.
Exactly, all the material.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Ms. Richmond, second by Ms. Barger to accept. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
Next, we have a request for a waiver of continued education class that was taken after the renewal date. Ms. Samantha Evans is a licensed cosmetologist instructor. She thought that her continuing education from Illinois would be able to be carried over to Tennessee. Unfortunately, the board office had advised her to go ahead and attend the last session in October. What was not realized is that her license had expired in August, so she in fact has already attended the session in October. She's renewed her license, but she should have come before the board and asked for that extension of 2 months prior to having taken it. She's requesting at this point that the board approve the class she took in October so she can renew her license. She stopped teaching. She has a job to teach and did immediately renew the cosmetology license, so that's what she's been working in and is desperate to get that job she was offered back. I think most of it was a misunderstanding. She thought what she'd done in Illinois would carry over.
Recommendation
Is that we grant this the one-time approval for an extension, which instructors are allowed to have, in which case then she'd be able to count that October session she's already attended and get her instructor license in good standing.
We have a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
second.
We have a motion by Ms. Tanksley, and where was our second? Oh, Ms. Barger?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tedefeller. To approve, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it.
Thank you. Next is a request for instructor extension as well from Judy Sloan. She was required to take her continuing education. She's requesting that we allow her to extend her continuing education to 2015. She was unable to timely complete the 16 hours due to her husband's surgery. This would be her request if granted pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 62-4-113A2, which allows a one-time extension of continuing education. Before you review are the dates that she's taken. She's always been timely with her previous ones.
Such a recommendation is to approve.
Allow her to extend if it's okay with the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the extension.
Second it.
Motion by Ms. Tanksley, second by Ms. Richmond to approve. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes have it.
Thank you. Next is an instructor for Tracy Hare. The extension request, again, is for an extension to 2015. She was unable to timely complete her 16 hours due to medical issues. She's provided medical records to explain her situation. This would again be her one-time request and pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 62-4-114A2. This would be the only time she's allowed to have that extension.
I'll move to.
Motion to approve. Go ahead.
That you take it.
We have a
Go.
motion by Ms. Richmond, a second by Ms. Barger to approve. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. The last request for extension is from Instructor Patricia Ann Hunt. She's requesting an extension for continuing education to 2015. She was actually granted this extension previously for 2013. So before you is the letter that she's written for your review. However, she's not completed a continuing education since 2011. My recommendation would be that we not grant it since she was already given that extension one time.
Make a motion, we deny.
I second.
We have a motion by Ms. Coppinger, seconded by Ms. Barger to deny. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passed.
We are going to go ahead and, before I turn over the Reciprocity Committee meeting update to Ms. Coppinger, our new chairperson for that committee, I would like to bring to your attention on your iPads on page 166, we have an update from the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations that I wanted the entire board to hear and make a decision on. They've concluded the investigation for United Beauty College. They have found no evidence that the school was in violation of the Texas Cosmetology school laws or rules. The board had voted on February 3rd of 2014 at that meeting to temporarily suspend reciprocity licensing for applicants from Texas. Applicants have been approved to test if the school that they have gone to and received hours from was not under investigation. Based on recent information received from United Beauty College, the request is made for those applicants who attended that school to be approved to take the Tennessee examination if the board approves that. So at this moment, that is the only school that has been released. I suspect as they complete the investigations, we will keep getting these, and I can present it just to the Reciprocity Committee if that's okay with the board, and we can approve those as they come, and hopefully at some point then reconsider reciprocity with Texas as a whole.
Do you know if we have any from this particular school that are outstanding?
Yes, I pulled the two individuals. There are only
Okay.
two right now that are waiting. I've actually been in contact with them, so they are aware that we're waiting on a decision for them to test. Also, with any applicants that I talked to from Texas, I explained that the language issue could be a problem, but we've been promised that as of March, they'll be able to test in Vietnamese and leave that decision to them at that point.
Motion to accept from this school.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Richmond, seconded by Ms. Coppinger to accept hours from this school. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
Thank you. I will turn the floor over to Ms. Coppinger. She will give an update of what we discussed, and then we'll proceed.
Okay. This morning regarding the reciprocity applicants, the Reciprocity Committee decided, because we are trying to be uniform and consistent in our, with the reciprocity cases, so we decided, first of all, if any applicant requesting reciprocity is missing an exam or exams, that we request they take the exam that they're missing. So if they are missing a practical exam, we request they take that. If they're missing both exams, then we request that they take both exams. Also, if the state has an apprenticeship program as well as their school program, then we would require that they have the 5-year current work history and have taken exams to be approved. Because those apprenticeship programs are so varied in all states. And thirdly, the board office is going to search the schools that would be willing to finish hours for those who are short on hours. But we decided that the issue of applicants who are coming with a shortage of hours from what Tennessee requires, we wanted to bring that to the full board. Because, and I'll just quickly say, years ago, we just consistently said, go back to school, take 300 hours if you have 1,200, so you can, meet the Tennessee requirements. Then we were a little bit lenient on it for a while, just asking them to take the exams to speed up the process of them being employed. So there's two ways to look at that. If someone is short a few hours and they take the exams, do we feel like they're qualified for, in the state of Tennessee? Or do they need to complete the hours to match ours? In the law book, it says substantially meets requirements, and that's where we were kind of pushed a few years ago to kind of be more lenient on those hours. And it's so hard and so ambiguous to figure out what's substantial. What percentage of hours is substantial? I don't know. So any thoughts on what we need to do here? Because we wanted to bring this to the full board.
The work history would have to have something to do with that. If they're asking for reciprocity, but they've not, say they've had their license in another state for 10 years, so they've worked for 10 years, would they need to come back and do even more?
And I think, if I could interject, I think with the additional hours, that's been our problem. There's not been the 5 years of work history. Anytime we have an individual with 5 or more, I think it's been a given that work history compensates the hours, and we automatically approve. We've never wavered on that. The issue is we are having more and more applicants, even like Ms. Muir, who have just been licensed for 2, maybe 3 years, with 240 hours, 260 in aesthetics, 1,000 in barbering or cosmetology from New York, and on and on. So those individuals don't have the work experience. I think those are the ones that we're talking about.
Yeah, my initial thought years ago was simply, this is what Tennessee requires, these amount of hours. So when you're moving here, you've got to match the hours and then take our exams. But, so many people at one time, I'm not sure why, were moving from Florida with 1,200 hours. And then is there an issue with schools taking these students with a few amount of hours, and what do they charge? And they charge an arm and a leg? I don't know. So
I think Florida, they don't require some of the testing parts like we require, right?
For the cosmetology, there's no practical, but for aesthetics and manicuring, there's none. There's no state-run exam. So those 2 licenses don't have any examination.
So under our decision about the missing exams, they would still have to do that. But we're trying to decide if they're the hours.
How do we do
So
with the
what
hours?
about
If they haven't been working 5 years, right?
what
Yeah,
about,
if they've been working a current 5-year work history, that's in the law. They can take care of that in the office.
Okay.
if each year that they've worked and have tax return or whatever, that could equal some portion of hours that we could add to their missing hours? Does that make sense?
I think I'd feel differently if I got the impression that it was easy to go to a school and get a minimum number of hours. But what I'm hearing is that schools are not, I don't want to use the word interested, but are not willing to work with these students to get the additional 200, 300 hours. I want to think there's a variety of reasons for that. But that puts the applicant in a real conundrum of they're out of options.
I'm sorry. We have a school owner here. Would you like to speak to whether or not you'd be willing to take students?
Yes, sir. I get my point of view at our school. Now, granted, I'm strictly dealing
Ryan,
with
I hate to, could you go ahead and say your name and the school you're with for the record?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ryan Hurd with Shear Academy.
Thank you.
With our school, being that we're only barbering, so we're limited to the amount of people that actually come in for needing those hours in the state of Tennessee. It's typically on the cosmetology side. But on the barbering side, we will, for the certain amount of hours, we'll give a discount because of the fact that with financial aid, you have to qualify, you have to meet the hour requirement to get any kind of funding help. So then it comes out of pocket. Well, out of pocket, that can be thousands of dollars, as we heard from that ridiculous amount of money that poor young lady was going to have to pay. So in our school, we're willing to help in that aspect if needed, to give them the opportunity to come at a very discounted rate to get the remaining hours. Now, that's typically only if it's under 600 hours. Now, beyond 600 hours, then you're looking at a program amount. So then it would fall under financial aid, and that would take on a whole different animal. But if you need 600 hours at that point, our recommendation is come to our school for the whole program. Just come under the whole 1,500 hours and relearn it under the Tennessee side. But from a standpoint of your private schools just aren't going to waiver. It's going to have to come into the public sector somehow. But I think it'd be horrible if we don't allow these people to come into our state, have the opportunity to gain their license, especially if they have that work history and or they have the schooling. I understand falling under the hours is required, but if they can take and pass the test, we offer a brush-up course. Takes about 3 weeks to a month, depending upon where you're at. If you've been approved to take the test because you don't need any more hours, you just don't have the knowledge, excuse me, we'll offer, about a month program for them to come in and brush up on what they need to know for us. Go through our PSI exam that we make all our students go through. And then, of course, go through the laws and the theory portion as well. So we do our best to help in that aspect, but that's typically only in the sense that they're able to take the test, not the hours. So I agree in a sense with Ms. Barger because of the idea of if they have a work history and if they deserve the opportunity to transfer that work history, maybe there should be some portion of hours, but obviously that's up to you guys on how that works. But I just don't feel like that if we take that opportunity away from them, it's.
If I gave a false impression that schools cannot accept someone for small hours due to their accreditation, that's not accurate. Any school can offer that course at any price that they wish if they want to enroll the student. And that graduations then, on the plus side, increases that school's completion rates. So there's a plus to them for taking that short hour student as well. It's just a matter of whether they're able to receive federal financial aid. It's where the short hours get to be an issue. If they're not in school for,
14 days.
For how many hours before they're not eligible?
I'm sorry.
Is there an hour limitation on when they're eligible
No.
for financial aid?
Oh, yeah, you have to 600 hours.
600 hours?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a 600-hour program, if they're doing the full program, they're getting financial aid and they can roll.
Correct, and that is the easy process when they meet that. But typically they don't. Typically they're within, 500 or less.
Right,
They're real
exactly.
close, or even 300.
Or the
It's the
manicure.
biggest portion problem.
It's mainly what we see.
Okay.
My thought just left me. Oh, I asked Miss Roxana to put us together a list of schools that would be provided to the people that were coming in here that needed the extra hours. And she was going to follow up with that and maybe put out something for the students that are moving here that need the hours.
For me to understand this, if you'll just bear with me here, if someone comes to you and they need 600 hours and your full course is 1,500 and they qualify for financial aid, you would get fully funded for the 1,500 hours?
Oh, man. Well, the federal government says that 900 hours constitutes a curriculum, a full year.
Okay.
So at 900 hours, you qualify as a school to offer a full financial aid. Being that it's only a 600 hours program, that's a prorated amount. So you're still able to get it. Once you go below that, then it becomes just a licensure type scenario. It's not a course. They can't offer a course. So at that 600 hours, that's the kind of the minimum that the federal government will allow.
That's what I was trying to understand.
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Okay.
At that point, you can receive financial aid. A prorated amount of 2/3 because it's not the full 900. But it's still that opportunity. It still gives them a chance.
Right.
And if you have a school, especially a privatized school, where this says, okay, well, that's not that's fine. That's enough for us to be able to cover our costs and be able to do it.
There are those levels also in the section or sector where they can get
Well-
600, 900, 300?
The public sector is really what the Board of Regents approves, which would be the technical schools. And to be honest with you, I don't know their breakdown. I don't know if anyone on the board would. We can try to find out. I know that their cost is much lower, but I don't know their breakdown in order to accept them. And they may not be available, as vastly throughout the state. There won't, but
Would they vary from school to school?
no, they should be pretty standard for them.
Now this is a personal friendship and relationship that I've had with a particular instructor that was a vocational school instructor for 30 years. And he and I, and his problem that he had with that was he is very limited to the amount of students. He can only, as a cosmetology, he is the only instructor, he can only have 20. Most of your technical schools, because of the financial amount that they are able to charge being a state institution, they're booked, typically 1, 2, even more years out for a student to be able to come into that program. For them to allow a partial hour student to come into that program is certainly not under their practices, their general practices of a school, because they have to be obligated to that 1,500-hour individual before they open up the opportunity for a lower numbered hour
Thank you for
person.
explaining that. Yeah, thank you.
So if I can kind of get my head back wrapped around this, we really need to come up with a plan as a board on how we want to apportion the fairness of if someone is 50 hours short versus 250 hours short, what are we going to approve, what are we not going to approve? The law requires the full amount. While I do appreciate personally that it can be a hardship on someone trying to attend school, it is also an investment in their career, just like if you're going to Harvard or somewhere else, it is an investment. People need to make an investment. And at night, worked all day, drove a long way. It was difficult, but we did it. And so many are doing that. So personal recommendation would be to do the full hours.
I mean, that was so much easier to do because you can't, it's so hard to be fair based on the amount of hours that they're short. If you forgive 300 hours and say take the test, and then somebody comes in and they are 360 hours short, which is over half of the hours they needed. It's just, I don't know, it just gets
And then
really.
there's always that question, which hours?
I know.
What part of the curriculum are they really missing?
But I'm thinking, if I took my teacher, my teacher license to another state, I'm thinking I'd have to match what their requirements were. So,
Could I ask us just to think, differently, not knowing that this may be a longer-term solution? I don't want to incentivize people to get their licenses in other states because they allow fewer hours. I think there's real adverse selection in saying you can get however many hours Texas allows or Florida allows, which is substantially less than half of what we allow. I think we've also dealt with the esthetician license, and I don't know if it's in Florida or other states as well, but their requirements are pretty minimum, and they're transferring here and getting I think we define that license much differently. So what I would be curious is, as your committee, Nana, sits down and looks at the individual licenses, I would really like to know what you think is the most important thing for these people to know in order to practice here in Tennessee. What are those key things that we feel are absolutely necessary? Is it just covered on the test? And if they pass the test, is that enough? Or is there some sort of other, again, new solution that we should challenge to provide a refresher course or something like that? Again, I don't own a school. I don't know how complicated that is, but I'm hearing from the school owners that it is not advantageous to them to have these students because of the financial aid parameters that they're operating under. I'm hearing that the technical schools that have a lower cost option are full, and it's still not in their best interest. So if we're telling all these folks to go get more hours, they don't have any other options other than to pay $5,000 for how many hours did she say she
Right.
needed? I mean, that's ridiculous.
360.
I mean, that's a personal
really
opinion. I should
And
not
that is
inflect
just
that on.
one school?
I mean, that's ridiculous.
There's no way to gauge what schools might do.
And your schools can set their own price.
Right. So I'd like to see us think about what else would there be.
Yeah, another solution.
Yeah,
because-
I mean, because I think there's a big difference if you're transferring here to do nails from Florida and you have a manicurist license and you're moving here as a manicurist and you're applying for a manicuring license. Not necessarily we need to do a study to say what does Florida do and what do we do, but what are the things that are really important to Tennessee that we feel that our consumers are protected by what we're providing in those shops. I think there's a much bigger disconnect between someone moving here from Florida and applying for, and I hate to use Florida as an example, it just seems to be something we talk about a lot, and applying for an esthetician license. Because those might be two dramatically different things. Because you're saying that, what is an esthetician's license?
From Florida, Alabama, to Mississippi, Louisiana, to Tennessee, you're talking about dramatically different, almost all points of the star.
Right.
And differences of people who practice aesthetics and go to school. It's really different in every state that borders us.
But we're responsible for knowing what we're allowing to practice here in the state of Tennessee, and that the people who we license or under this board are qualified to do that, or
And
at
I
least
don't know-
understand the rules.
But I don't know if you can break it down, because what we're saying is, all right, if you want to be a cosmetologist in Tennessee, you need 1,500 hours of school. And so evidently, all 1,500 hours are very important, and then you take the test, and then you go on. And your point about people going somewhere else to get their license, I made that point years ago. I said, okay, I'm going to go to Florida. If you're not going to require me to finish my hours, I'm going to go to Florida, get 1,200 hours, come up here, and then take the test, and then I don't have to pay for 300 more hours, or New York 1,000 hours, and I'm going to go to Tennessee and just take the test, and so
I don't disagree with you.
I think it needs to be a standard. Our laws are our laws. They know that when they move here, or they should have.
But I'm hearing the consistencies. There's not a place to send these students.
Well, for years we required that, and I don't know how they were getting it.
And they found a way to do it?
Evidently,
doing it.
because we required go back to school.
Yeah.
I mean, we said this time and time again, go back to school for X amount of hours, take the Tennessee exam. Go back to school for X amount of hours, we did it just routinely.
And we didn't, and again, I don't have the context, so I apologize. But at that point, you weren't getting the people coming back and
We weren't.
saying,
We
they're just
weren't at
finding
that
a way to
time.
do it.
Evidently, or they did something, they went and worked at Walmart, I don't know.
Have the
Or do
rules
you
changed
think-
substantially with the schools in that
I was
5
going to
years?
say, do you think there's less schools that are allowing it now? There's not been a...
No. If I may, we've been approving these folks for reciprocity and requiring additional hours in the Barber side for as long as I know of. And the result has been, when we've required them to do it, they find a way to do it. It actually is, this case we had this morning is really the first one that I've seen that had a real difficulty or a real problem doing that. And I suspect that it has to do with geographical locations and finances personally versus what is universally across the state. What may be available to someone who lives in Upper East Tennessee might be much more difficult for them to find another suitable location. And suitable is a pretty broad term. What's suitable for someone who may not have a lot of money, may not have childcare, may not have a job that has hours that allow them to go to school. But essentially, there are many schools out there who are willing to accept. I think it was just in this one case that particular person could not find a suitable location in an area she was willing to drive.
So would your feeling be that if I'm hearing Nina say that in the past, it was just go get the full number of hours, you figure out a way to do that, that's the ruling, and then the exceptions come to us with whatever reason why they couldn't do that?
That's the way it has been.
I'd just like to say that I did like your point on, well, what are they learning in those 1,500 hours? And if that is reflected in the test, could they have learned that in 1,000 hours in another state? I like that point. I mean,
And I believe when the board, and I wasn't here, but based on history, I believe when the board pushed for that to be the recommendation, that if they can pass the test, then they substantially have met it, whether in the 2 years experience working or the educational level, or they got more books and learned on their own. The theory behind moving to those decisions was if they can pass the exam, we're comfortable putting them in the public because somehow they've met and are qualified to do it. And that was the reason.
Yes, I know
for
a
the
lot
mo-
of my 1,500 hours were practicing. So if you've worked 2 years, that's your practice that you didn't maybe get in your, I don't know. I'm just looking at every angle.
I don't think there's a right answer, and I hate to stir the pot, but I don't think this problem's going to be getting easier. I think it's getting more challenging.
We have a member of the public back here that would like to be recognized. If you would come forward, please, we will hear you. Could you give us your name, please?
Sure. My name is Lindsay Johnson. I'm the executive director at Empire Beauty School in Brentwood. And I just wanted to, I know there's a question about what schools are willing to do for people that are required by the board to obtain more hours. I can only speak for the cosmetology program, so we don't offer a manicuring program. And aesthetics would be a little bit different. But for cosmetology, if a student from another state contacts our school, our first recommendation is call the state board, ask them what they require of you, and then let us know. So if they had 1,200 hours from another state, the board's recommendation was go to a school and get 300 hours. We would, if they had graduated from a program in another state, we would recognize those hours, and we would contract them for the remaining hours, so 300 hours, and we only charge them per hour to complete. So it would depend on how many hours they require as to how, what their charge would be. We do take a look at their transcripts from the other school to find out if there was a subject that we teach in our curriculum that they were lacking. We also require that during their time, if in that 300 hours, that they do take our state law and state board course to make sure that they do know the state board practices in Tennessee, that they could pass a practical exam and the written exam, and that they know the Tennessee state laws as well. So we take all of that into consideration. The only time that changes is if they didn't actually graduate from a program, they just did some hours in another school or another state, and then we have a test-in process and we take a percentage. But if they did actually graduate from a program, we would recognize all of those hours and accept them in. So it's not a very difficult process, but we have, the school in Brentwood, we also have 3 schools in Memphis and 1 in Jackson, Tennessee as well. So we're not in East Tennessee, so if anyone's over there, then obviously we would be convenient to that location. But I just wanted to speak to make sure that you knew that there are schools out there that are willing to help these people out that are coming in from other states to recognize those hours and help them get to the point of being able to be licensed in Tennessee.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate that. Okay. Are we any closer to a recommendation, members?
Well, I can make a recommendation or a motion or whatever I need to do, because I've been on both sides of this, and I've always felt strongly about the laws that we have and why they're in place and why we have a certain amount of hour requirements. So my recommendation or motion would be that we require reciprocity applicants to complete their missing hours to match Tennessee hours and then take the Tennessee exams.
Second that.
Second that.
And that's just if they have less than 5 years.
Well, if they have 5 years current experience, no, that's
a different Sorry, I just want to clarify.
Yeah, but it's the last 5 years, current 5 years.
And they have the option of just testing.
No, they can get reciprocity. That's in the law.
reciprocity.
That's okay.
That's one of the ways you can get reciprocity.
Okay.
There are, Rob, can you explain the ways right now as it's written to get reciprocity?
And I can do that, I think, because I approve the majority of reciprocity. Obviously, if you have to have an active license, so that's your first requirement. With that active license, you need to have at least the number of hours we have or more and have taken the exams. So if you're coming from Florida with only 1,200, let's say, you're lacking that practical exam. moving forward, the committee has given me the permission to send a letter saying you need to take the practical. And that's pretty much regardless of the numbers of years of experience. The decision is you need that practical. If, however, you're coming from New York with 1,000 hours and they test and do the practical and the theory, you're missing 500. But if you have the last 5 years' work history, I'd be able to approve them because they substantially met it. And so those last 5 years' experience balance out the hours, if you will. And so that won't change. The issue is if you have less than the 5 years. And so the motion, as I hear it, is that we will require always for the missing hours to be taken and then the Tennessee examination. And if I'm correct along with that motion, does the committee for the Reciprocity Committee want to still review those, or am I okay to send the letter saying you need to take 360 or however many hours and take the exam, since that's the decision across the board?
I don't see any reason for us to review that if that's, because that can be very consistent, and
I agree.
you can take care of
Okay.
that.
You handle that.
Okay.
So we had that motion by Ms. Coppinger, and it was seconded by Ms. Tifteller. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it.
I want to thank everyone for the
Thank
debate.
Thank you. It's good.
If someone calls
is
and they
good.
have 4 years' experience, tell them, don't move yet.
Really?
No, that
Go
is a
back
good
to
point.
work.
No, but I really appreciate everyone here and the expertise that you're bringing to the table, because I want to make sure that we're pushing for the best solution, not necessarily the easiest solution or the thing that drives me crazy, what's been done in the past.
Thank you to everyone in the audience that came forward. You had really offered some great information.
I think, and I also think that Chairman Gillihan made a good point. It could vary based on where you live, and that's a difficult thing, but those few exceptions, I think the board would be willing to hear on a one-on-one basis if we got to that point. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Before I pass this on to Rob, I have one applicant that was supposed to call me before she decided to appear, if that was her decision, and did not. So they came this morning and gave me the information. So if it's okay, you don't have this information in front of you. The situation is Ms. Hong Nok To had been approved to take the PSI examination. Her school hours were there. She's basically been taking it for a few years. And as you all know, PSI now does all their information online from the schools. Well, she had not passed the exam, and it's been too long since she's continued to attempt it and been failing it, and so they put it over to the board to review. Unfortunately, the state that she studied in no longer keeps the records of the schooling hours. So I'd like the board's permission to, based on the fact that she'd previously been approved to take the exams, allow her to continue taking them, even though I don't have a transcript. And normally, we have to have that transcript in hand. But without it, she would not be able, she'd have to go back to school. The state just hasn't kept it. I think the fact that she was submitted to PSI, we have an old application, means that if we are okay with it, I can continue to allow her to test. And hopefully, if the language is the issue, by March, that'll be resolved.
So she had been approved and already tested before?
She had, but the last time I think she attempted the exam and failed was 2 years ago. And so PSI, of course, asked for a new application, and then we ran into, I needed a transcript, and that state no longer has it. So,
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
That's seconded by Ms. Coppinger.
thank you. Thank you very much. And that is everything I have. I will, oh, I'm sorry.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
Thank you. All right, Rob.
Before we get started on the legal committee report, our litigator has communicated with me during the course of this meeting. And with all the cases we have, some of them have proceeded to litigation, and that's in front of an ALJ, Administrative Law Judge. Well, we've had an appeal. And of course, this board is the level of appeal, so you're going to have to hear this. So in order to get that going, I've been provided a scheduling order that I need the chairman to sign. If I can just give it to you. All right, our complaint committee met this morning on the 6th floor, and we didn't have a full crew, but we had two very important people there. And we have an acting chairperson, Ms. Tanksley, and we went over the complaints, and I will let her tell what we landed upon.
I hope everyone got to read their 48 pages. You know, wasn't double what we normally have. But we had some good discussion this morning. I think a lot of it was the same of the Reciprocity Committee, that we all voiced concern about consistency across our rulings being the most important going forward. At this time, everything in your packet was approved by our committee without any changes, but I would like to open it up to everyone on the board if they have other issues or concerns they'd like to bring up from what we received.
We trust the committee's work very well.
I will have to say I'm very appreciative of Mr. Herndon for his work putting this all together and making all of his recommendations. So thank you. Need a vote to approve?
We need to make a motion to approve in a second.
I make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Ms. Sappenfeld. Was the second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it.
Roxana, can I ask you, did we need a motion to approve the couple of things that we did decide in the committee meeting about if they're missing the exams?
Oh, yes, that's a very good point. The three items that the apprenticeship, the exams, and then we concluded one thing right now with the hours.
Right.
And then I'll be sending the list to the schools just to kind of get a feel for how many would be willing to take the minor school. So
Yeah, this gives you the authority from the board that if they're missing either any exam or exams, that they'd have to take those, and also any state with their apprentice schools as well as the traditional school, that they have to, if they have to have a 5-year current work history and have taken the exams to be granted reciprocity. Oh, that's a motion, yeah.
That's a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion that's properly seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
thank you.
Next thing down is the notice of rulemaking hearing. We have prepared our notice. Everything is ready to file for a hearing. And Roxana and I have tried to arrive at a date that we need you to approve. That date is January 5th, and I can let Roxana explain how that arrived at that.
We don't have a board meeting in January, as you all know, and I think based on the number of days that the notice of hearing has to be out there, which is 52 days, it would push us right around the Christmas holiday. So we decided to not do that. The meeting, if it's okay with everyone's calendar, January the 5th is that Monday, right after hopefully a long holiday weekend, and then that's all we would be addressing, so hopefully.
All we would do is
That's all
have the
we would do.
rulemaking hearing. No other business.
Do we need a motion to approve that date or set the
Yes, I
schedule?
would like the board to approve January 5th.
Is there discussion? Somebody have a conflict you know of?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Richmond, second by Ms. Tiffteller, to approve January the 5th for the rulemaking hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay, set your dates.
Chairman, would we need a weather day, backup day? I'm kind of thinking,
It's not really, once it's filed, it's not that easy to move around, but there are provisions for that. If we have a physical quorum, 50% of you plus one, the rest can call in telephonically. You're not actually required to physically be here, but at that point, whenever somebody spoke, you'd have to announce who you were and all that for the record. So Always best to have a physical quorum here, and the rest, if you want to participate, and you should. Public comments, then you could call in if you're snowed in or iced in or something. Moving on your pad, page 168. This just shows how many consent orders have been finalized. $24,200 in civil penalties. Page 170 is all the agreed citations. These are those things that never got to legal, handled administratively. And that comes to a total of $13,500 in civil penalties. Those are complaints that you never had to deal with, so I'm kind of happy to present that. The next page is a list of letters of warning, again, that were generated by agreed citations. And these two pages never became complaints. So between this and utilizing the complaint committee and their other reciprocity committee, we're trying to really streamline the board's work here. I think we're having some success.
Thank you for your work on that.
We will need motions. If we could, on the consent orders, we need a motion to approve the $24,200 we've received.
To approve. Second.
Seconded by Ms. Richmond. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
And the next item is the paid agreed citations, $13,500 received.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Richmond, seconded by Ms. Sappenfeld to approve. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
That, remarkably, is the entirety of our legal report.
Aye.
I'm
impressed. Wow.
They're going to find you another job.
Really?
We've got one item on the letters of warning. If I could get again a motion, this is all the cases before you, and they would be all individuals who've not had any, either been licensed for a very long time, basically no other open, complaints, and so they're getting directly letters from the office without them going to legal.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tiffeteller. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
We've got one last item. We talked about this last month. It's basically the monthly hours report. I would like to present for you on the last 2 pages the Excel version of our monthly hourly report. We have followed the recommendation by Ms. Tanksley, which I appreciate immensely, to where the board office does not have to have the full Social Security number. We're going to be requesting the schools only provide the last 4. They must present the last name, first name, last 4. Enrollment dates, very important. Course of study, some schools forget, so that is actually going to help us. The last 3 columns, of course, what hours they took the previous month, the hours that they carry year to date, and then the hours completed. And so hopefully that's not a huge change in the layout of the report. At the bottom, we've got the school owner still signing, or manager. Some schools have instructors, and I think that's still perfectly okay. So the first question, as we look at this, is does the board still want and need for us to have it notarized? And the reason I'm asking for that is then that would mean that the school would have to print it, have it notarized, and scan it to us, and that's perfectly fine. But if we don't have a need for the notarization, they literally could PDF that Excel document and shoot it just as it is.
Technology.
Love it.
Are we okay with that?
I think it'd be great.
Okay. So,
It only verifies the signature. And
I've said that to our staff all the time. So if that's okay, we will take out the notarization, and that would be the first page. And then if you could take a look at the second page, it hasn't changed a whole lot. Instructors and their ID numbers will still be listed. Junior instructors and ID, instructor trainees. This form is going to be used by Barber as well as Cosmetology, and Barbers have they have assistant.
Assistants.
Thank you, assistant instructors. So I'll make sure to add that. I noticed that I missed that. That way, the form, again, can be one for both types of school. And then at the bottom, their number of full-time and part-time students that they have. So if there's anything between the school owners and instructors that we've got on the board that you think I've missed, please let me know.
Currently on, I believe the reports that at least we've always used, it did not request the Social Security numbers at all on the Barber forms. It's fine that it's on there. I would think that since we're going to change this form, there's going to be a lot of schools who may not be as plugged in or be as aware, so we might need to get some word out to them that they can change this.
My plan, if it's good with the board, is to send a letter explaining to all the schools, and now that we're going to reach out to them anyway and let them know that some students that are moving to Tennessee might be asking for a limited number of hours, that I'd like to know if they're willing to work with those students. I am planning on giving them a link to this PDF document or to my email address and information so that they know they can have the Excel version. We're going to send them a copy printed out. Some of the schools may not use Excel and want the electronic version. I think the vast majority will. I keep hearing the prisons in particular, their plans. It's difficult for them to meet some of the other requirements. And so the schools will be able to complete these on their computer, load them from one month to the other. So it's really going to be in their hands how mathematical they want to get into it and how they want to load all their information, or their softwares for timekeeping. So Excel allows them a lot of other options. But that was my plan, is to send a letter with a paper copy. They could just photocopy and say that this is now the required form. Many schools actually have creatively done their own forms. So we've got a mixture of different things, and we've just, as long as they've provided one that looks close enough, accepted it. I think once we standardize this and those that need the Excel version have it electronically, will be good.
Hurd, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, sir. Brian Hurd from Shear Academy. I guess my concern is the federal regulations that we have about sending classified information via, i.e. the Social Security numbers across the internet.
It won't be the whole number. It's just the last four digits.
The last four? Super. Thank you.
Thank you. So easy.
Do we need an approval for that?
Yes, please. I need a motion to be able to use this form, and I'll be doing the mailing to both Barber and Cosmetology schools.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second by Ms. Appenfeld to approve. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Now, will you be sending this to high schools also?
I will be sending it to the Board of Regents so that they can distribute it, and the Board of Education so that they distribute it to the schools that carry the curriculum. And that's usually what we've done with those two sections, because I don't have all the details of which ones carry it and their numbers, but it's worked. If it hasn't, let me know. It doesn't get you. Thank you so much. And that is all that I have. If there are any other questions or concerns that we'd like to discuss, I'm all done. Thank you.
Members, is there anything that we need to discuss regarding the upcoming rulemaking committee hearings, or further progress on the apprenticeship groundwork? Do you have any reports for us on those?
No, our next step is to file the notice. It will appear, I'm going to file it today, and in a few days it'll appear on the Secretary of State's website, at which time we'll put it on our website and send out a notice to all of our registrants for them to read. And then I'm expecting that people are going to start sending written comments in. Hearing rolls around, I'm going to read all those comments into the record for you to make a response. Listen to those comments too, and then you will go through the rules one at a time and see what you think about the public comments, if we need to adjust them at all. And at the end, you'll make a vote to approve the rules, and then I'll start the process of getting them published.
It's comments on all existing rules, and then open floor for any new.
Well, People are no doubt going to write in, they're going to email, they're going to send letters, and I'm going to have to read those into the record at the meeting. And then you'll get a chance to respond. And then there'll also be a crowd here that's going to want to talk. One at a time, and let you respond to them.
So this is going to be,
Does that conclude our business?
And my advice, if once
gonna
this
take
date
all
is,
day.
yeah, it's going to be all day. Once the date is published, again, hopefully everyone signed up for the email notification. Anyone that signed up for it is going to see what the draft rules look like. And so I expect that the board office will start getting letters, emails, calls. I'm going to ask that they submit things in writing, just so that it's all in their words and we know exactly what we're reading. You may be, someone may reach you directly, and I would just, again, point them to do the same. Contact the board office and state that you know that they're going to need to submit something in writing. They can fax it in, email it. That way we've got it organized and we don't miss something.
We won't consider anything that's not submitted in writing to us. They can't just tell you as a board member, I think this or that, and expect that to be considered. So you tell them, put it down on an email or letter, mail it to the address on the notice.
And it's my understanding, and Rob, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the rules as they're drafted and the way we're going to look at them, those are the only things that we can still make a change to or do it. So if it hasn't been addressed already to change that, this particular round, we wouldn't be able to change things such as curriculum and things that just weren't addressed during this flow. They would have to wait for the next round. Am I correct?
Only the rules that are open can be
touched.
Yeah.
And the rules are based on what the law says right now. So there's, like it says, 750 apprenticeship hours. I mean, that's just stone. Yeah.
Statute is the statute.
Okay.
The statute is the authority. The statute's the authority, and the rule is how we figure out how to implement it. So.
We might need a few reminders of that as we progress through the day.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean.
Make a banner, hang in the back.
A sign that he holds
It is what it is, written right now, yeah.
Before we move to adjourn, I would like to thank the audience once again for coming and participating. We normally don't finish quite this early, so I don't want to hinder the board. But I would like to open the floor and see if anyone in the audience has any comments or anything they'd like to share. If you would be brief, step forward, we'll recognize you, and we're glad that you're here. Okay.
Oh, good. That's great.
Thanks for coming. Okay. All right.
I did think of one thing, just a quick reminder. After the previous board meeting, I emailed everyone spreadsheets that I know Denise Lawrence talked to us about regarding the laws for the two different boards that are now one kind of coming to terms. If anyone had ideas, things that you want to give me feedback on those, I've not heard back from anybody. What will happen is with Rob, probably Rachel, myself, we're going to sit down and really go through all of those so that we at least make the recommendations. You know, it has to be looked at and changed completely, or the cosmetology had it, the barber didn't, and so we're going to add it. We're going to look at all of those that you saw in the spreadsheet. But if you've got any ideas or concerns, make sure to email those to me, definitely within December, so that we can get it to Senator Bell.
I printed that off and it was microscopic, so I'm going to
Oh,
have
my
to go
God,
back and do
read it.
something different. Is it to get it more consistent? For example, the
Yes.
cosmetology, you can't have an animal. In Barber, you can, so.
Correct.
And birds.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
And if, I emailed it in Excel, so your best bet is probably to, if you have Excel as a program, to look at it there, because then your columns will be better, and you'll be able to read it, because I'm with you, otherwise it's hard. But that's exactly the case. As we're moving toward, like, a duly licensed shop, and we had one in the cosmetology board, remember, that was denied because he wanted the fishbowl, and he couldn't have it. And so, as we wanted to make it simple for schools and shops to be duly licensed and be fair, those kind of things have to start lining up.
One last thing you can do for me. Effectively, we're going to have two rulemakings, because the Barber Board had rules in progress. The Cosmetology Board also had rules in progress, and they're on two separate notices. So I guess I'll go ahead and ask the board, which one do you want to do first? The Barber one is much shorter and probably much less contentious. But if you want to do that and get it out of the way, or do you want to use it to come down off the cosmetology one? It's up to you. Just let me know, and I'll plan on which one to do first. Well, you know, if we deal with the Cosmo first, we've got the hard work out of the way, and then some things may be able to be applied and carry over. Anyone else?
Agree with you. Let's push the big load down.
Do the hard work first.
Good. That is it, Mr. Chairman.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Who made the motion?
I will.
I would entertain.
All of us.
Ms. Granger moved and Ms. Richmond seconded. Is there any
Do we
discussion?
need to vote on that?
All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Fun meeting today.
What are we going to do for the rest of the day?
Thank you. I'm sorry I was late for the meeting this morning.
You're going shopping?
I got called. I don't
Now
know
my
if she
husband and my
let you know, but I was
puppy
stuck in
are,
traffic.
they just took out a hotel, so we're going to